because they just had their elections in May. And so that's why I'm calling the meeting to order at 6:29. And so I think we'll start. This isn't technically a remote meeting, so we don't have to call the roll, do we?
Nope.
So there's really only one order of business, which is the election of a chair, and then the chair can take over for the election of other officers. And so I am entertaining motions for nomination of chair. Yes.
I nominate Margaret Stancer to be chair of the Pelham School Committee.
I second.
Are there any other nominations? All right. Are you willing to accept the nomination?
Yes, I
You
will
are.
accept the nomination.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of Margaret as chair? All right, it's 3-0. It's unanimous. And so I will turn over the chair to Margaret to carry out the other officer elections.
Okay, so we need, I need a motion, a nomination for our vice chair. Sarah Beth?
I nominate William Scher to be vice chair.
I'll second that motion.
I'll accept.
Any discussion? No. Okay, all those in favor? Okay. And we need a nomination for secretary.
I would nominate Sarah Bass.
I will second that nomination. Any, Sarah Beth, you accept that
I will accept.
nomination? Thank you, you take great minutes. All those in favor? Okay. We also need to elect 2 representatives to the regional committee. So I move to nominate William as a member of the region.
I will second it.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay,
I would nominate Sarah Bass.
I'll second that.
I will accept.
Okay, any discussion? No. Okay, all those in favor? Great. That's what we have to do. And just for informational purposes, what happened in Pelham is that we had one continuing person, who was Sarah Bess. My term was up. William was appointed during the year, and his term was up. So William took out papers to run, which would have left only 2 people on our committee. So I ran as a write-in candidate, and we have 3 people. We also had a few write-in candidates with only 1 vote. And apparently that means there was a failure to elect because it's all a tie. So when our select board chair is back in town, we are going to get together to figure out what's the next step. And the town clerk sent letters to all of those people, and we will find out whether any of them want to serve. So that's the story in Pelham for right now.
Maybe a surprise.
So Pelham will stay in session, right?
Okay, so I will call the regional school committee to order at 6:33. Oops.
Yeah.
And because we have a remote participant, we go around and make sure we're here. Deb?
Here.
William?
Here.
Jennifer?
Here.
Anna?
Here.
Sarah?
Here.
Bridget?
Here.
Irv?
Here.
Tillman?
Here.
And Sarah Bess. I am also here. Okay.
Over to me. Okay, seeing the presence of a quorum, I call the Amherst School Committee to order at 6:34. And since 1 member is remote, I will also take attendance by roll call. Deb Leonard? Here. Bridget Hines, yes. Jennifer Shaw,
Here.
Herb Rose, sorry.
Here.
And I'm here, Sarah Marshall. Thank you.
Okay, so for our new superintendent, there have been, we want to be able to welcome them and,
Point of order, Sarah Bess. I think you need to call the regional school committee to order.
I
She did.
did.
You
I
did?
called it first before Amherst.
Okay, thank you. I
I even
didn't
called
remember
on
that part.
Not sitting there second.
Sorry.
No, totally fine. Okay. So, we want to make sure that Dr. Herman is off to the best start we can possibly offer her. There has been some suggestions through this document from Irv on onboarding a superintendent, and since Dr. Herman will be working with all three of our committees, we felt it was a good conversation for all three committees to have. Sarah?
Yeah, I think I would like to hear the interim superintendent's thoughts about this because most of this work, I think, falls to him to ensure a thorough and smooth transition to the new superintendent. I would be interested to hear what, if any, what the school committees might need to do to help make any of this happen.
So what I'll share is what I've been thinking about and literally today asked some staff to work on a little bit is putting together some information, first and foremost from an operational standpoint. So there's a fair amount to learn about our district, but also just how to operate within Massachusetts and also within the three districts that we have and the structures we have. So I think for me, I'm thinking in terms of ways to put together information in digestible and coherent chunks, and much more around the operational aspects and component pieces, things that need to be attended to right away that have an urgency by virtue of the new fiscal year, and things that need to be attended to right away, like, oh, to spend any money, you have to sign off on certain kinds of things, or here are the first, sort of reports due to the state that you'll need to be aware of, and those kinds of things. So we're starting to internally kind of put together some pieces of information. Who does what? Who's who? What are the departments? How are we currently structured? What are the places where we get certain types of work done? Where are we thinking about restructuring, et cetera, et cetera? So we're in that process right now. I think there's obviously my own take on explaining some of the the constructs of three school committees, 4 towns, different forms of government, the ways in which certain aspects of the work get done, some of those types of things that have aspects of the political, but not really, in some respects, not who those players are and who the members are, both on the school committee, but then on those town governance pieces. I mean, certainly I'm going to introduce her to anyone and everyone I can, but I'm also thinking in terms of other kinds of introductions that have more to do with the sort of operational side, things, compliance side, that sort of thing. And I think for you guys to lean into the sort of community building, community connections would be a really important piece. And also, your take on the sort of political structure and how things work and don't work or whatever, are also part and parcel of things that need to happen. So I think that having, a thoughtful, planful approach to how you introduce the new superintendent to our system and who are the people both on these boards, but also in and around the community that they should get to know and be aware of, and build relationships with to have high level of functioning, I think is really a critical piece. Obviously, internally we'll do the same thing to some extent, but it's a very different lens, sort of on the inside versus from the committee's point of view. So getting both of those is going to be pretty critical, but we're certainly starting to put some pieces together to try to make the pragmatic operational components as straightforward as possible and as conveniently structured so that she has the ability to kind of step in, look at it, and be able to make decisions if she wishes to, and not be, too reliant on staff to kind of feed her everything to begin with, and let her be able to be independent enough to make her own decision if she wants to go in a different direction from what staff might recommend, or that, here's what we have, here's what we think, and she'll have hopefully enough, knowledge base to say, yeah, I'm okay with that, or let's talk about that some more, or whatever. We want to give her that frame so that she's not just in a reactive mode the whole time. So we're going to try to build those pieces and put them together here in the next few weeks and try to have those ready for her, to give her an organized start to the operational side of things.
Jennifer?
So, I think in general, it does make sense for a supervisor to provide an onboarding plan to a direct report, and Dr. Herman does report to us. But I feel like this is a situation in which I don't want to see us create an onboarding plan for her without her input. And she has submitted an onboarding plan to us. And so my first thought was, well, how does this interact with her submitted document? We should see how they overlap. But I don't want to do that without her input. So, but that being said, I don't object to anything on this plan. It's all pretty high level. But it makes me uncomfortable to think of us creating this and handing it down to her without her input. So I guess, that's my thought for now.
William?
I was just going to say that I think that the onboarding process needs to be committee approved. Like, we all need to figure out what we want to do. So I was going to suggest maybe, since we did have the SNS.
Hi, I'm back again. I popped out.
Sorry, since
Point of order, Deb, could you please mute? Or perhaps someone can
sorry.
mute Deb.
I was just going to say, since we had the SNS set up and we went through a very lengthy process of deciding what different community members needed to be included in the search group, that we should maybe have a plan as to making sure all those community groups or individuals could be met by community engagement with the superintendent. So I guess I would propose, could the SNS be in charge of making a plan to bring back to the committee, and then the committee could vote on it as far as different community groups for her to meet with, or just those are my thoughts right now.
Sure. Herb?
I want you all to think about this. This person is coming to a brand new community from outside the United States. She knows no one.
Point of order.
When I
She's
say-
not coming from outside the United
When I'll
States.
say outside the United States, outside the mainland United States. She has not been in the United States. She has not been in Amherst. Whether you know it or not, you may think, hey, well, she's an American citizen from U.S. Virgin Islands. So of course she knows about us. She doesn't. It's 99.9% black population there. She has been brought up through that system her entire life, her entire community structure. People who she knows and work with are not like us in a number of different ways. But most importantly, we have the obligation to onboard her in such a way that her transition is as seamless as possible. And that means that the current administration, as I've outlined here, has to come up with an orientation work plan. She does not need to come up with that. She doesn't know all the ins and outs of Amherst administration, who's in the office, their responsibilities, their duties, etc. She doesn't know anything about the culture in the office. She has not had the opportunity to talk with in any kind of in-depth way with Doug. Doug would have a major role in producing this orientation work plan. All right, don't do an orientation work plan by committee. Let those people who are directly involved in the day-to-day operation of this district be involved in completing that work plan. The other thing is the review of board policies and key decisions. Think about it. When she comes, within her first 30 days, she has incredibly important decisions to make. What are those decisions? How does it impact the district? Who does it impact? Who presents her with what those decisions have to are going to be made? Is it by the school committee presenting those? I think not. This is a dynamic organization. There's not something that takes, when she steps in, where decision-making is done by committee. She has executive authority to make certain decisions, and she will have to make those decisions. There will be decisions that she has to make immediately within the first 5 days, first 10 days, first 30 days, first 60 days, first 90 days. She will have to make those decisions. How she gets presented those decisions and what those decisions are rests with the present administration. They know what those decisions are going to be and what they're going to have to be. Finally, in terms of the culture outside of us, outside that we operate in Amherst, and I'll say Amherst, yes, there's the other towns, but primarily in Amherst, yes, there are some steps being planned for some what would be called community or onboarding, so that she can understand what this community is all about, the various groups, the people, the influencers, all of it, the community as it exists in the minds of all of us. And this is a diverse community. It has diverse opinions. And everyone in Amherst has 3 or 4 opinions, and they all conflict with each other. But that is who we are. And she needs to understand that. I do not wish for there to be a failure here. I wish for her to feel welcome. I wish for her to have a proper onboarding process. And if you want to know what a proper onboarding process is, here it is, part of it. Not all of it, but part of it. And her onboarding process was her plan for her entry plan. And sure, there might be some overlap. But man, we have to take some responsibility here. You know, and one of the things is, right off the bat, beginning to manage expectations about her. We need to manage expectations in this community. We cannot expect for her to be Doug on day one. Doug has been in this system for years. She can't possibly encapsulate all the information he has. So we have to manage that expectation among ourselves in the community in terms of how she navigates this. And say what you will. She's a human being. She's really, really skilled. But the most skillful person entering a system like this still needs to have information.
Sarah? You were next on the list if you have.
Okay. Well, I first wanted to respond to William's suggestion. Yeah, I know you were just, spitballing maybe, but I don't like the idea of SNS trying to take that over. First of all, it wasn't its mandate. Second of all, there are 3 different committees that can do the work and should do the work. It's already on the draft agenda I have in mind for our committee in June to discuss what Amherst School Committee wants to do about welcoming her into Amherst and what kind of events we might like to hold or what groups we want to introduce her to. And she will certainly, other groups will reach out. They don't have to come through us. That's totally fine. And so, but I guess I don't really understand and totally support Irv's goal to set Dr. Herman up for success. But it is not clear to me in this document. Yes, all these things, all this information needs to be provided. I think Doug is going to be providing a lot of it. So if there's particular parts that Irv thinks the school committees, either jointly or separately, ought to be in charge of. I'd like to know what those are. Otherwise, you know, are you seeking, do you want us to be instructing Doug to do all these other things that are outlined? I guess I don't know what we're supposed to do with this list of onboarding elements.
Jennifer?
I just feel like I need to respond to some of the things that Irv said at the beginning of his comments. They made me very uncomfortable. They felt very othering and a little belittling, and I'm sure wasn't the intention, but that was how I received it, and it made me very uncomfortable. Dr. Herman is, as you said, a skilled professional. I have every confidence in her decision-making. I have every confidence in her ability to make a decision 5 days in. And I have every confidence in our district to be able to appropriately present her with any decision that needs to be made. I also am confident in her ability to meet with the key individuals without us having to provide a list. I mean, we can provide a list, but I have every confidence in her being able to onboard onto this position. I am very dedicated to supporting her in succeeding. And that's why I think we should not dictate an onboarding plan to her. We should jointly develop one with her so that she can be engaged in and invested in what the onboarding plan looks like. And I think that, yeah, I lost my train of thought, but I think it should be something that's done jointly. Again, like, as I said, in a direct report supervisor relationship, maybe that makes sense, but this is and she does report, she is a direct report, but like this is more in this case, I see it as a partnership, not as something we should dictate.
Tillman?
So I agree that with Irv that we have to figure out how to provide the necessary information to Dr. Herman, and I think what Doug suggested sounded like the operational pieces are taken care of. I think there's questions around what the broader values and goals of the school committee are. I'm not sure I could articulate them right now for our committee. Maybe we need to think about this. But in terms of practical step forward, how about we have a Q&A session very early on with Dr. Herman when she's here, so we can have this in public, and we can maybe address a large fraction of these issues that will come up in natural conversation, and we'll learn what she already knows, or what's being taken care of, and where the questions are. And so then we can maybe do this as a first step, and then think about other ways of maybe more carefully plan any major activities. But I'm mostly worried about the operational pieces, and Doug seems to have those under control.
So this research that I did comes out of the best practices for onboarding superintendents. It's a summation of the information. All right, these are best practices. We can do, Doug can do, with this whatever you will. But I do know that when I look down over there are some critical ones that need to take place. And if they do not take place, we will be setting this person up for failure. These are critical things, and it's sort of like if you're in a situation where you're expected to lead and you're expected to make decisions, you need to have the information to be able to make decisions. That information has to be presented to you. It also has to be said to how to even get the information, and not only that, how do you as a leader step in to a situation where an interim is leaving. All of that information and knowledge, et cetera, needs to be passed on, but it just can't be passed on in an unorganized manner. It needs to be passed on in an organized manner. That's why the first thing you see there, and all of the plans that the best practices, develop an orientation work plan. And in that developing an orientation work plan, make sure you include all the major stakeholders within the organization.
Deb?
Hi. We won.
You won?
And
Yay!
state champions. Not state, Western Mass.
Western Mass.
Western Mass, yeah. So just channeling my experience as a teacher and as a constructivist-based teacher, this needs to be a conversation, and it might make sense, in my opinion, to start it by giving her like possible issues that she might want to follow up on. But I do think that taking the lead might make sense, but nothing as complete as what I'm seeing. That's it.
Thank you. Sarah?
I'll just throw out that I'm, as chair of the Amherst committee, thinking of discussing at our next meeting, or like a proposal that we should seek to have a retreat with the new superintendent as soon as is convenient for all of us to discuss exactly some of these things. Obviously, I haven't brought this to the committee yet because I'm thinking, each committee's each committee will have unique needs and concerns about the more or less urgent business that they want the superintendent to address, and I think maybe that's appropriate to do in a retreat. So I just put that out there as another way in which we can have these conversations.
Margaret?
I guess, Irv, I have a couple questions. One is, do you feel comfortable with Doug taking on the organization of the operational aspects when she gets here? Are you comfortable with that?
Oh, yes. I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I expect Doug to be front and center, and I expect most of
Okay.
that central office to be front and center.
Okay, so you said there were some things on this list that you felt were essential. Can you identify specifically the things on here that you feel are essential and how you would go about dealing with them?
Yeah, the first one is developing an orientation work plan. And that's, I see Doug and his staff being fully involved and engaged in doing that.
Okay,
And the priorities, the plan, all of the things that are there, are the board, the committee, the financial structure, all the informational needs for her in broad strokes being put in this orientation plan. And then Doug, I have supreme confidence in, will be able to lead her through the kind of decisions that she's going to have to make in those 30, 60, and 90 days, within those days. I'm supremely confident that Doug will be able to present her. I am also supremely confident that Doug will be able to supply her with all the intricacies of the operations of the school committee, all of the, all the various school committees. Also, that he will provide the appropriate gateways and introductions to the principals at all the schools, both the middle school, high school, and the other school, the elementary schools. Doug knows all of that, and I know that he will be doing all of those things. So I don't feel any angst in that. And what I wanted, my objective in doing this, putting this was, hey, here are some best practices. Here are some steps to consider. Let's discuss them. Wanting to make sure that Doug understood, and I know that Doug understands where I'm coming from and where this is coming from. But I also wanted to make sure that the school committee grasp what these issues and tasks are going to need to be.
okay.
Did you have any other thoughts?
Not right at this moment.
Okay. Bridget?
So I just have a couple of really pragmatic questions. Like, what's Doug's role officially, like, with the district after July 1? And who's the person keeping or making the calendar after July 1 for the new superintendent? Because I think both of those are sort of like, if I were at work right now, I'd be like, what can I officially even ask of Doug? You know, good guy, but what's he being paid for? And then, right? You know what I mean? And then secondly, I mean, it's an open fact that we know that the person who may be most instrumental in providing the key documents, unpacking, putting forward things that unpack some of the key issues, and maybe even, although I think maybe the key players is more a job of school committee outside of the staff in the building, but in the community, then like who is that person? Because like right now, if you wanted to get someone on Dr. Herman's calendar, how would you go about it? Or, you know, what's just the logistics I'm thinking about a lot, I guess.
Well, one of those is really easy. Doug just goes back to being our financial director. So
He's like, phew.
he's like, oh my God, I'm done with this. No.
Not so fast.
And I think as for the other pieces, those are being worked out.
Yeah, I think, no, I think that's exactly the kind of thing we're thinking about right now, sort of how to structure it, how to, you know, introduce those things in a coherent way, and in a manageable way, because, you know, there's a few people that are, you know, changing roles, and, you know, we've got a couple of folks retiring, so Faye Brady's leaving, so we've got a new person in that role. Debbie Westmoreland's leaving. She's obviously going to spend some time between now and when she retires. We'll hopefully have someone hired in between now and then that she can start to work with in that regard. That's going to be a critical person in the process as well. But we've got a lot of, you know, we've got a deep bench. We've got a lot of great people that know a lot of stuff, and fortunately, you know, Ms. Westmoreland's not entirely disappearing off the planet, so we have her as a resource that there'll be a lot of things that we'll have to come back to that won't come up for a while, and that'll be true for me. That'll be true for, you know, any of a number of, you know, leaders, Marta Guevara and Jerry Champagne in IS, and Rupert in facilities, you know, Rupert Roy Clark in facilities. So we'll all have pieces that engage over time that we'll be needing to be thinking about and being aware of, and at the same time, in the short term, we're trying to, you know, starting to think through what are the ways we sort of stack this up to give her opportunity to gather it and to be as functional as quickly as possible and not overwhelmed by it, because there's a huge volume of stuff to know, and so some of that will be conversations with her about what she appreciates or knows about how she learns and what she wants to know first and wants to own first, and then it'll be on the rest of us to support that strategy. And so we'll put a few pieces together and start to have conversations with her about what she prefers or doesn't prefer, and what's the order in which she wants to learn some things, and what best suits her learning style and her needs and her focus and vision and mission and that sort of thing, and then we'll support around that and adjust and adapt accordingly.
I just wanted to share an email exchange that I had with Doug and Debbie a few months ago. I don't know if this is still the case, but I was concerned when Debbie announced that she was retiring. And since the person in the previous superintendent's assistant role has also left the district, I just wanted to make sure we were setting up our new superintendent for success. And I believe Doug answered that. So my understanding is Debbie's last day is July 13th, so there'll be some overlap with Dr. Herman. And then I believe the answer was the work of the director of communications and the superintendent's assistant maybe would be combined into an executive assistant role. I don't know if that's still the case, but that they wanted the new superintendent to be involved in hiring that person. So in terms of like who's managing her calendar, I think that's part of what that position or task or role would be.
Right, and I think that the other thing I'll just say along those lines is, as you know from the budget, there's a few reductions in central office staff. And so the staffing that we have had this year will be, the number of people, I should say, we've had is going to be about the same, but thinking about how to organize the task, roles, and responsibilities within that number of folks. We're in the process of looking at that, both at the sort of director level. Most of that's pretty well defined, and that'll be something that can evolve over a longer time horizon and as the new superintendent gets familiar. But, you know, that sort of next tier of folks that provide a lot of support is an area where we're spending some time thinking about who owns which pieces and what, there's some historical sort of inertial sort of things that people own as far as work, and when you have changes in who those staff are, you have an opportunity to sort of take a step back and think through those and go, oh, maybe we should have it like this and this and this instead of the way we've had it. And so that's a process going on right now, just even thinking about a new person coming into that executive type of role. And I think Dr. Herman will be a critical component of figuring that out, because some of it will depend on what her particular likes, dislikes, needs, wants around support for her in an immediate assistant role are, and then we'll figure out the rest as we build that around that.
Anna?
Yeah, so I was gonna ask Doug, I don't think we, as a school committee, did anything for you when you started as superintendent. I think it was a little bit of baptism by fire. And so it would be interesting to know, if we were to do this all over again and you were the starting superintendent, what do you wish we had done for you when you started? And I know it would be a little bit different than what she would wish will be done for her, because she has a different familiarity with the district than you do. But at the same time, there are certain things about being superintendent that she already knows that you maybe didn't know as well because you haven't been a superintendent before. And then there's things about the district that you already know that she doesn't know as well. So there's definitely a very different base from which both of you are starting. But there may be some things that you know automatically, well, she really needs to know this, 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 and this, and we're gonna make sure that she has that. But I think that that's a good place to start. I had another thing, but I'm gonna come back to that because I forgot it already, so.
Okay.
So, I think the fact that I've been in the district a long time and was familiar with the district and the circumstances, so, the need for sort of onboarding was not the same. And the things that were new to me weren't really that new. It's just I had to actually deal with them as opposed to just know that they exist. There's a very big difference there, but there's, until you have to do it, you don't have to really deal with it. So there's no onboarding you can do that solves that problem. But I do think that there are things that along those lines, though, that will be part of the, perhaps not formal written sort of advice, but things that I'm going to try to be thinking about as far as awareness and personal perspectives on things that will come up, and each of you will have those same kind of conversations about this person's really good to listen to, or maybe you don't want to listen to that person as much. You all have those opinions about people in our community and our staff and as well, and so that'll be useful to her, I think, and she'll make her own opinions, but I think that we can be, thoughtful about, offering those and preparing those as part and parcel of this as well. I think the advantage of having been in the district a long time, the need for kind of climbing the learning curve was not as great. I knew how school operates in Massachusetts. I know what the districts are structured and how the finances work and all those kind of nitty-gritty things I knew. So that wasn't an area I needed as much support, but I have been thinking about that as part of what we want to lay out a little bit, just to, again, sort of put it in some manageable chunks, because you don't need to know all of it immediately. But as we know with, the budget stuff is that, you have to be pretty knowledgeable pretty quick.
Extra quick.
And I think that, the sooner we can get her up to speed on some of those kinds of things, the better. And then also just, there are things other than just budget. I know as a finance director, it's shocking to hear that I would say that, but there are plenty of other things that need attention and are of importance to her and importance to district that we'll want to frame and have her opinion about what she wants to sort of bring on and take a closer look at first as well.
So Dr. Herman obviously is not an employee here until July 1st, but possibly, I don't know what is the appropriate level of communication, if any, with her about any district business before then. We could, or you could be feeding her all information anytime if she wants it. So can you just give us your sense of are you in regular communication or not? Or she's just going to walk in on day one and say, what you got?
No, I mean, I hope to be in connection. Debbie Westmoreland reached out, I think it was today, maybe it was the other day, I lost track, to just sort of start to build that line of communication. I think it'll be, at this point in time, like you said, she's not officially an employee, so it's really to her level of comfort and her,
Right.
and her availability, to be perfectly honest. I mean, if she's deciding to take a couple-week vacation before she comes to work for us, she deserves to get a vacation, and so we have to be thoughtful and cognizant of that. But if she's, be to her level of interest and availability, I think, to a large degree. But we want to be prepared to share with her whatever she's ready to take on. But yeah, we can't, I think, expect too much just because, hey, we've got other things we're kind of trying to finish up the school year a little bit, and she's got other things to sort of put together as she thinks about, a non-trivial move and setting up a household and all those other things. So there'll be some limitations, I think, just from, purely pragmatic standpoint. But I think to her comfort levels, what we'll work through in that regard.
Bridget?
So we had raised at some point the question of mentorship with another superintendent, and maybe even thinking about, okay, what's another district that's sort of like Amherst or similar to Amherst, so we could get that mentorship piece in place. And so I'm wondering, who initiates that, or how would we get that piece going?
So there's a couple of things. So one of the interesting things, the collaborative does a tremendous amount of that work. So the Hampshire Educational Collaborative in Northampton, we're a member of, and I don't think the ink was dry on the contract, and the president of that organization, who's been a superintendent, said, give her my contact information first chance you get, and they're happy to provide sort of mentors, and they have a whole group of them. But there are others that do it as well, so we can kind of think through that a little bit. Because I think there's a number of ways that independent lens is very important to someone new to Massachusetts, and not. It's great to know the sort of inside stuff of Amherst and the region and Pelham, and it's sometimes really important to get a broader perspective from people who've worked outside our system. So, we'll be looking into that a little bit. And again, to her comfort level about who and what kind of support she wants. There's a couple different places. I mean, the collaborative is one place. There are others that provide that kind of support. And there are other kinds of support than just that we can think about too, that may have to do with mentoring within the community, just to build, relationships in and around town. That again isn't somebody like me. I mean, I have know a number of folks, but that may not be the right. And I'm happy to introduce her to all the people I know, and that may not be the best person to sort of connect her in with the community. And that's some of what you guys can do. And then I think there can be more formal, for lack of a term, mentoring of her by virtue of people who've been in and around the community and understand it, both from inside school and external school, but thinking more than just the sort of classic mentoring of a superintendent in that role in Massachusetts, which is what I think with collaborative. There are other ways to support her transition into our community that I think we want to look at as well.
And then I just wanted to say really quickly that I heard two ideas I like, and it made me think of a third. I think the retreat with the superintendent is a great idea. I think a Q&A with the school board, also a great idea. And we'll have the community picnic in August, and so just like all of us doing our due diligence to bring people over and whatnot that she could be familiar with and so forth. And then, in terms of key documents, key issues, those things I think we're counting on Debbie and Doug to put together before July 1.
Margaret?
Well, Bridget kind of addressed some of the things that I've been wondering about, and we've talked a lot about all the operational aspects, but we haven't really talked very much yet about the cultural aspects and things like Sarah, you mentioned your committee talking about the things that are ongoing or you're working on or that you want to work on? And how do those things get presented to her? When do those things get presented to her? I really like the idea of a retreat with all of us. The region usually does one, but I think this year might be a year for all of us. And what happens, I'm gonna speak from my point of view, is I get left out of a lot of things. Pelham gets sort of set aside because Shutesbury, Leverett have people on here, Pelham has 2 people on here, but I'm the chair in Pelham. And I don't get the communications necessarily, and people have been very gracious to pass them on to me, and I appreciate that. So I feel like at the beginning, it might be really important for all 3 committees together to meet with her. And to get a sense from her of how she would like to proceed with us, you know. And I like Tillman's suggestion as well.
Irv?
Doug, you mentioned about mentors. I do know that she has been assigned a mentor from some state group, I forget, or some state group, I don't know which one it is. But she has been, and that person is local. She's a former superintendent at Athol, I believe. But she will be her mentor that has been assigned. And that doesn't mean the other ones, the CES, which is a really good group to know, and also that she knows that she can and will be a part of that superintendent subgroup of CES. And so I think that is something really good for us to know. I mean, I believe a retreat would be incredibly good for her, given at some point in time before the school year. I guess that there is a sense that she will, when she comes to this community, be welcomed with open arms. There are, I think I've said before, there is a group, community group, who is working on a welcoming event for her. And you'll know more about that, and that I think that's going to be, it's for sometime in July. But more of that will come forward in the very near future. And there are other groups who I know who are actively trying to figure out how to plan events for her. I do know that.
Should be busy.
Jennifer?
So, Irv, who is the community group you're speaking of that's planning a welcoming event?
It's an informal group. They haven't totally formed. There are about 4 or 5 of them.
And will this event be open to the public?
I have no idea. It might be a private home group. It doesn't have to be a school-sponsored event.
But the fact that you're bringing it up in a public meeting makes me uncomfortable that you're mentioning that there's going to be these private events.
Thank you. I will, in the future, and I mention them so that people
Well,
will know.
Well, so on that note, I would also ask that as you get information such as she's been assigned a specific mentor from, I assume you're talking about MASS, the Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents?
I can't
If you could,
remember.
oh, it's fine. But as you get information like that, that's pertinent, if you could share it with us, we would really appreciate it. Because I didn't realize she had already been assigned a mentor. Thank you. I have 2 more things. I don't think we should be sending her any work before she's officially on payroll, even in the read this if you have time. I just, that before she's on payroll, that comes too close to wage theft to me. If she asks, like, could I see your budget? Like, that's fine to share it, but I don't think we should offer that. Okay, the last thing is, this conversation's been great, but we have a lot to talk about tonight and a long agenda. So unless there's a decision ahead of us, I would ask that we move on.
Okay, moving on. Next up is our discussion and, oh dear, I lost it. Vote on the superintendent evaluation instrument.
So this is, it was attached to the agenda. It is basically a download from the SurveyMonkey website. And the formatting gets really screwed up when you download it. But there's just, I think the biggest problem is that there's big gaps in between questions, and there are no gaps on the SurveyMonkey. So even though it looks really awkward, it's not as awkward when you see it online. Just so you know that. Debbie Westmoreland looked at this, and she gave us some feedback as to the superintendent evaluation process sort of more generally. The way this works is that there are 4 standards that we need to rate the superintendent on that have nothing to do specifically with the goals that we set for him. And so what we have done is shown what those standards are, and then we picked like one portion of that standard to highlight because one of his goals was most affiliated with that part of the standard. And so that is sort of explained as this is standard 1, section 2. And so this is what we're wanting you to think about as you rate him on standard 1. And then as a sort of like a side note, here's the goal portion that is related to that standard. So that helps you reference what we're talking about. But it's not the goal specifically that you're rating him on, it's the standard overall. As you work your way down, at the very end of all 4 standards are his actual goals. And that's a separate rating thing. And, you know, goal number 1 was huge. And it was split into like many, many, many different parts. And what I did try to do was to break up goal 1 into a couple of different parts so that you could rate it. Did I actually do that? Maybe I didn't. But all of the different parts are there. And yeah, it's all there, which is kind of a lot. But this is rated in a slightly different way than the standards are, which is also awkward, I think. I am not a fan of this evaluation tool, but it is apparently what Desi uses, and so we feel compelled to use it too. So it is what it is. What I have done is put some additional explanation for what we think, the subcommittee, think of William and me, think might be a way to describe what a rating of did not meet some progress, significant progress, and met the goal and exceeded the goal would look like, just to give you some ideas to sort of like get some consistency across evaluations. So what one person thinks of meeting expectations is probably similar to what other people are thinking is meeting expectations, in the hopes that once we submit all of our forms to, and I think this is Sarah Bess, Sarah Marshall, and Margaret Stancer, they can then get together and summarize all of that feedback into something coherent.
So,
Unless they decide they don't want to do it and they want to designate somebody else to do it for them.
so the only thing is that there are 3 separate ones.
Oh,
We're
you-
not,
oh,
we're not, I mean,
you have
we're
to- each
friends,
have to
but we
write your
don't-
own?
Yes, each committee does
Oh.
their own. So like, if
Okay.
you sit on Amherst, you do one for Amherst and one for the region. If you sit on Pelham, one for, so there,
Okay, so,
So I was gonna just say, the very beginning was one question that we had that we thought we'd bring to the committee. At the very beginning of it, you have to check off what you're evaluating for. It would be easier if you could just check Pelham and the region, but I don't know if that's that's how we have it set up now, but I think we might have to separate them. And if you're on the region and Pelham, you may need to do 2 of them. So we can change that first question, so you have to do it twice if you serve on 2 of the committees.
Margaret?
I would just say, this year, the goals are pretty similar, but they're not always. And so you would, for example, for me in Pelham, I'm not going to do anything about the middle school and high school math stuff. So I'm going to have to say, they're going to have to know that my comments are based on the evaluation of the iReady program in Pelham. So I think it's important to have a distinction and to have separate evaluations. It's a,
Did you set such different, sorry. Did you set such different goals? Like,
not this year.
okay, they're the same goals overall, but you have a different focus.
Pretty much.
Okay,
I mean,
okay, like, do we need to create a different form?
No.
Okay,
I think
good.
it's-
It's like, oh, no.
The math
Okay.
stuff is on there for both.
Yes.
But one applies to the middle school,
Yeah.
high school, and one applies to the elementary schools.
Yeah,
So
okay.
we can change, we can edit it to where you only can check one box in the first question.
Yeah, so
Okay.
historically it's been.
And then just-
They're three separate ones, and then because, well, there has been, over my experience, tried to, streamline the goals so they work together, kind of, but, Amherst is trying to bring a new school online, and neither the region or Pelham are gonna have, I mean, we can have inside thoughts and feelings about that, but not outside thoughts and feelings, right? So, so yeah, they have to be separate because
Yep.
they're three
Yep.
separate.
Okay, so when we submit all of our forms and they get sent to the different chairs, the chairs still need to be able to coherently consolidate all of the information, and it's much easier to do that if there's a similar understanding of what each rating means. And so what I tried to do, and William, what we tried to do was to create that coherence, and that will leave it less ambiguous when you rate on the different characteristics. Does that make sense? Does anybody have questions about the form? Yes, Sarah.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, Sarah.
All right. So this committee is a committee of two people, neither of whom, thank you so much. This must have been.
Neither of them are in Amherst, yes.
Right, neither of whom are in Amherst. So how did you come up with this, anchoring of did not meet some progress for the sixth grade move? I mean, did you
we took
ask anybody?
No,
or-
we took it straight from the goals and
Yeah.
straight from the documents we've already done. We didn't really make up any of it, but
I mean,
Okay.
I just-
kind of gradations of.
Correct.
of what, how you,
Yes.
yeah, yes. So you take the goals as they are, and then I created, and William checked with me on these differentiations between the different measures. And honestly, it was my best guess.
and Desi kind of sets up how you have to.
Yeah, they have
do
like
it.
they have,
We
so
just tried to
the
explain
very
it a little
first
bit
portion
more
of
thorough.
the meets, or, the different ones, have said sort of like, this is what it means to do some, they have like sort of like guidance for what that means. And so then I tried to make these fit with those guidances.
Can I follow
And
up?
then Debbie Westmoreland went through them and agreed it all was in line with what Desi wanted. So
Yes.
it's all been like
Okay,
fact
very
checked
good.
through
Thank you,
Debbie
Debbie.
Westmoreland.
Thank you, Debbie. So then I have, and maybe you answered this, I'm sorry, because I'm new to this. So the goals, near the end, there are 5 possible responses. But for
Yes.
the standards or whatever,
only
there are
4.
only 4. So is this something, a change
Desi.
you made?
No.
Oh, really?
No, it's all
Okay.
from Desi.
Yes, and this is
Yeah.
what I was saying, I do
Got
not
it.
like Desi's form.
Okay.
Especially because of this, you rate the standards differently than you rate the goals, and it's a little bit confusing, and
And according
The
to
whole
what,
thing is a little
according to
confusing.
what the goals
Yeah.
you pick out at the beginning of the year, they fit within certain standards.
Right, right.
So you don't rate the superintendent on every standard. You only rate them
no, you
on.
rate them on all the
all the
standards,
standards,
just
but
not
they
all
have
the
to-
portions of the
Right,
standard.
Some of the,
yes.
indicators.
So
Correct, yeah.
what you're
Yes.
supposed to do, and I think I don't know if Doug did this on purpose or if we managed to just serendipitously do this, but you're supposed to choose a goal from each of the standards, and you kind of like wedge them. This is, but
Yeah, a little bit.
yeah, but
Yeah.
so then we have only one. It's basically standard 1, section 2, is we don't have all of the different sections of standard 1 as goals.
Right.
We only have one section of standard. So that section of standard 1 is listed on the standard 1 evaluation portion. And we have not put the other different parts of that standard up there because that was not part of the goal. And so I wanted to just sort of like, we wanted to focus on the portion that was most relevant. And so that's why there's only portions of each standard that are on the standards evaluation portion.
So
Margaret?
So my experience both on the evaluation subcommittee and doing these evaluations for the past 6 years is that,
You should have been on the committee.
well, I'm not on the region. I mean,
Right.
this is difficult because we try to coordinate, but
And it didn't,
it's hard. Shoot, I forgot what I was gonna say, but I have a question. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. It's common that in any given standard, you don't have all the indicators in any given year. There may be 1, there may be 3, there may be 4.
Yeah.
There always has to be 1.
yes.
So that's not unusual at all. I have a question. There's a sentence here I don't understand. This is
A little
on,
typo.
the pages are not numbered, forgive me, so.
Yeah, it's because it's from this Survey Monkey
And
thing. Yeah,
I
it's-
should have
it's so weird.
hand numbered
I
them,
had
but
thought I
I
had
did
asked
not.
it when I
Question
printed
14.
it.
This is question 14, goal 1, and after you list all of this, it says, because this goal covers so many subcategories, please rate based on the category that most resembles your overall assessment of achievement of this goal. I don't understand what that means.
So you're supposed to rate goal 1 as unsatisfactory, needs improvement, proficient, exemplary. And
The goal, I'm supposed to rate the goal
the
that
entire
way.
goal.
It's-
No, sorry,
Some-
sorry,
it's- yeah,
sorry,
you have it.
13,
It's the
13,
wrong
sorry,
one.
wrong portion.
Did
Sorry.
not meet some progress, significant progress, so I don't.
Right, so it's possible that you might think that for goal 1, he met expectations in, sorry, I'm missing. He met expectations in, enhancing existing processes and procedures related to updating names and pronouns. But you could think that he is making some progress in professional development. And you think that he has made little progress in other aspects. And so you might not think that he has been making some progress all on every single portion of all the many different portions of goal 1, but sort of like as like in a big picture, overall, would you say that even though he was not really making a lot of progress on this goal and making good progress on that goal and meeting expectations on that goal, overall, you would say he did what?
Okay, so
It's a little.
And then in the comments, explain.
Explain why you can say, well, I don't think that he was actually meeting expectations here, but I rated him meeting expectations because he was doing really well over here. And so that because this one is especially large and covers so many different portions of goals, that it needs a little bit more.
So what you're saying is we have these categories, did not meet some progress, significant progress, and there's one more.
Met
I have to check one of those.
one of those for
Correct.
all of the
But
goals in goal
then,
1.
even, so say but he's done, say maybe he's made excellent progress, whatever the next one is, on one aspect of this, but he hasn't done the other things. I mean, I am just really confused about all of this detail.
So
So I think you just have to choose overall where you think he lands on those 4 subcategories. And then if you think there's one bullet point that he doesn't meet at all, then you could explain that in the comments.
So if I could
Because the
offer a
form
little-
doesn't allow us to like
Yes.
break it down.
Yeah,
more.
so if I could offer a little suggestion, so the standards are the expectation of all superintendents across the Commonwealth. And so if there are areas that don't have goals related to them, but
This
are
is
in the
specifically
standard-
for the goal question,
No, I know
not
that.
goal
I'm-
one.
I'm-
Okay.
I'm painting the picture here a little
Okay.
bit, sorry. So the standards section, you know, if there's something that is in that list of standards that I did really well, but wasn't any part of my goal, but you thought it was really great, you can kind of call it out in that standards, you know, because those are expectations generally set by the state as a process of things you do. The performance goals are again tied back to those standards, but at the same time, you know, each goal has a single rating. So it's sort of, you know, your grade in the course as opposed to the grade on this assignment. So each of the component pieces of a goal, you know, because these are broken out in multiple steps, is that, oh, you know, if you know, each of those is sort of an assignment, and then it's a cumulative grade, right? So your final choice for goal 1 is going to be the sort of what you think cumulatively was a representation of how well I met those goals, or met those component pieces of that goal. And so if something's really, really important to you, you may weigh it differently than William might, or Sarah Beth might. That's fine too. That's where your comments explain, well, this was really important to me. I thought this was the most important piece of this whole goal. That's why I said he didn't meet it or he met or whatever. So it's sort of a composite grade of the whole, and then, you know, you explain sort of which pieces had most meaning for you and how well I did relative to those that had most meaning for you. And that's sort of distinct from in the standard section where you're thinking about it more from a sort of regardless of goals, not entirely regardless of goals, but, you know, somewhat, there's opportunities to sort of bring up other things that aren't in the goals that you can, you know, call out for good or bad.
Okay.
Jennifer?
All right. Sorry, so you guys said this was a 2-person committee, but I thought it was a 3-person committee.
The third member resigned.
I resigned.
Okay, but then did the remaining members consider like asking for someone else to join?
I
We
don't
just-
think I don't think we've had a meeting in between,
We haven't.
so it would have been tricky to make that happen.
I did let the
The
chair know.
timeline was really tight, and we just wanted to try to get it done, so we moved forward.
Okay,
And
thank you.
but clearly, we are asking for feedback here. If there's any changes that need to be made to the document, we are open to suggestions. And we can either vote to approve this document, we can vote to approve the document as amended, or we can go back and try again.
I would also say maybe for not historic, but going forward, as Margaret said, as Sarah Marshall said, it might be important to make sure that when we are forming this evaluation tool, that we do have a representative from each committee, and not leaving out the committees, as we did.
Tillman?
Thanks for writing those, let's say, interpretations of the adjectives that are given by the state. I wanted to ask Doug if he's comfortable with those interpretations.
Yeah, I think they're fine. I think that, you know, I think it's more guidance for you guys, and comments are going to be where we really sort of paint the picture. So I think if there's something that you guys have discomfort with on that, it's, you know, it's like, it's good enough, and then, you know, your comments allow you to really expand if there's something you really want to make sure that I know, or that the new superintendent should know about where we are as a district. So I think they're fine, but, you know, take the opportunity of the comments to expand or elucidate a bit more if you need to.
Can I make a motion,
Sure.
or should we have more discussion?
There is no one else on the list.
I move that we approve the superintendent evaluation instrument as presented. Can you second first?
Sure, second. Second.
Sarah Marshall?
Yes. I would amend it with the deletion of the parenthetical in question 2. please select all that apply. When-
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, what she said.
Okay. Do either of the other chairs would like to start? Oh, it's all just three then. Just kidding. Nope. I lied. You can't do it. Sorry.
What? But we can, Amherst has to do it. What do you
Yes,
mean?
But
but
not yet.
Tillman made the motion for the region,
Oh, right.
so we gotta start here. William,
Yes.
Jennifer,
Abstain.
Anna,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Bridget,
Yes.
Irv,
Yes.
Tillman,
Yes.
Deb, are you still here?
Yep, yes, I'm here, and yes, I vote yes.
Oh, yes. And Sarah Bess, they vote yes. So it is 8-0, with one abstention. Okay.
Margaret, go ahead.
I move that the Pelham School Committee approve the superintendent evaluation instrument. Okay. As amended. Thank you.
I second.
Any discussion? No. Okay. William?
Yes.
Sarah Bass?
Yes.
Margaret? Yes. That's 3-0.
Can I have a motion from the Amherst School Committee?
Sure. I move that we accept the evaluation for the superintendent as amended.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Irv seconded. Thank you. Any more discussion? All right, roll call vote. Jennifer?
Abstain.
Bridget?
Yes.
Irv?
Yes.
Deb?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, so that passes 4-0. Thank you very much, subcommittee.
401.
Excuse me?
401.
Sorry, you are right, correct. 4-0-1.
I move to adjourn the Pelham School Committee meeting.
I will second.
All right. All those in favor? All right.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Margaret.
Okay. Sorry. Were we going to, before Pelham, I mean, I know they already adjourned, but Doug put in his artifacts document. Were we going to have a discussion of it, or it's simply for us to look at as we,
I don't think it's just what, well,
I don't know. I've never done this, so do we discuss it or present it, or?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Were you planning to do it at our meeting on the 5th or 4th, whenever the Pelham meeting is?
It's due.
Or
Yes.
would you rather do it one time?
I can do it multiple times, that I don't mind. I can tell you, however, though, that it got posted about 6:35. I got a text from Debbie saying, it's posted now. So it's only been up. I haven't even seen all of the final pieces of it, so I think it'd be a little tough for me to necessarily go through all, I mean, I'm pretty sure I know most of what's in it. It's fairly extensive. There's lots of links to other things, so that'll give you guys an opportunity to kind of go through it, and then I can do a brief presentation in any or all of the committees. That's not a problem, because I think the presentation's fairly concise. It's really sort of just answering your questions or providing any other context for you guys in each of those. So I don't have a problem with doing it more than once if necessary.
Okay.
Point of order, just for Doug and Debbie to know, at least to me, it seems like there's only the blue links are active. I'm not getting links through on the green.
Well, let's see.
I didn't think the green was supposed to be links.
Okay, maybe not.
Sarah?
Can I ask for confirmation that the evaluations for the region are due on June 4th? Is that correct? Was that the schedule that was proposed? Okay.
so I
And-
didn't realize he was gonna have to present us anything.
Well, I don't know. I just
Right.
saw the saw
Cause I don't
this
think we have
document.
time
Yeah.
in the calendar for it to be presented at a regional meeting before we have to turn the
Well, that's
evaluations
why I
in.
asked if he was doing
Right.
it now, so, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
No, they're hot bunking the seat.
All right. So next up. Hi, Deb.
Hi, Deb.
So, all right. Next up is a motion that was submitted by Irv. Irv, would you like to present this?
Yes. The RSC and ASC intend to communicate to the four towns, school staff, school community, and the general public that we, the RSC and the ASC, take seriously the fiscal issues surrounding the budgetary challenges facing the schools in general, and the RSC and the ASC in particular. The RSC and the ASC commit themselves to examining the budgetary realities to form the foundations of how we provide excellent educational services to our students. It is understood that the RSC and ASC will have to work closely with the town to determine the exact makeup of the committee. The motion. I move that a committee be formed with town staff, members of the RSC and the ASC, town council members, school staff, and other towns and fiscal experts in the community to work on a multi-year school fiscal sustainability plan. It is suggested that the above committee begin immediately to review the school's short and long-term fiscal challenges, identify the core issues, and recommend a plan that preserves the excellent education we provide to our children within our limited financial resources. Further, any such committee be co-chaired by the town manager or his designee and the superintendent of schools or her designee. The school committee shall be represented by the chair and the vice chair of the RSC or their designees, and the ASC shall be represented by the chair and the vice chair or their designees. Additionally, any such committee will be comprised of a majority of school-affiliated members. It is understood that the town manager may, now I want to repeat that, may present a slightly different proposal, if any. It is recommended that any difference between the two proposals be reconciled by the representatives of the RSC and the ASC, respectively, fully submitted by Irv Rhodes. That is the motion.
Second.
Discussion.
Well, I got to speak to it. I'm
Yeah.
allowed to speak to my motion.
Sure.
All right. This motion is not new, by the way. Last year, this was proposed by Sean and others in the town and the town manager. And it didn't get anywhere because Sean left. But there was a community, and I went back to find the notes, and I will find them because I was a part of it, and I believe Doug was a part of it also. But that was in the works. This and this thing is we need to be lead on this rather than be led. The town manager may or may not propose a similar motion. I have no idea whether he may or may not. However, it is our responsibility to prepare for what we know will be a very challenging fiscal environment. We cannot do it by ourselves. We can act now to prepare for the beginning of the budget process. This school committee has gone on record for seeking additional funds outside of those allocated by the four towns. And then by doing that, indicating that we were reliant upon the four towns to provide the fiscal resources to us, but however had failed to do so, so we asked them for additional resources. The next fiscal year is challenging and we will see significant cuts. How will the RSC and ASC be able to respond without having adequate financial information from the towns? And how will the towns respond without undertaking an in-depth look at how the schools are financed and if adjustments need to be made? The superintendent will be the co-chair of this committee. This will be an excellent way for her to learn about the budget, the fiscal issues, and other financial underpinnings of the regional schools in Amherst. Additionally, she will begin to know and work with members of the ASC, the RSC, and the 4 towns. How better to get to know the process and what we are dealing with in terms of our finances, if not by working with those who are engaged and involved in it. The budget process starts in September. Whether she is ready or not, the budget process will start. Being a part of this committee will give her a vantage point and points of information sooner than would have been available otherwise. Give her this opportunity to succeed. The charge of this committee will and has no mandate other than the financial underpinnings of the RSC and ASC. Curriculum, instruction, and staffing to achieve educational goals and objectives have and always will be within the purview of the RSC and ASC, not this committee. If members believe that this should be more strongly indicated in motion, then they can do so by amendment. Lastly, this is a vote to approve the formation of the committee, not when it will be formed. Thank you.
Jennifer?
So I'm strongly opposed to this motion. I think it's inappropriate for Amherst Town Council members, the Amherst Town Manager, and municipal officials from other towns to be involved in school finances at this level. It's outside of their purview, and it's not appropriate. Mass General Law dictates a process for school budgeting, which is that the superintendent proposes the budget and the school committee approves it. To have this parallel committee is inappropriate. Sorry, I keep saying inappropriate. I can't think of a better word. It's inappropriate for town council members to be recommending an educational plan. It's completely outside of their purview. I do think we need a concerted effort to address the long-term financial outlook of our district, but I think it should be a school committee subcommittee or a subcommittee representing the Regional School Committee in Amherst, which would operate as any other standing or ad hoc subcommittee, which is to have a charge to make recommendations to the full committees. The subcommittee could be made up of less than a quorum of each committee, and they would engage with our partners in the school administration, in our municipalities, and at the state level as needed, if they're going to need to partner with all those individuals in order to figure out a long-term issue, or a long-term plan. I agree with Irv that we should lead. That's why we should not have a committee co-chaired by the town manager or designee. It should be a school committee subcommittee, and we partner with and engage with appropriate parties as needed. And if we do go down the road of having a motion to create a school committee subcommittee, I think that the membership on the committee should not be part of the motion. That runs against our practice of the way we populate subcommittees. So to summarize, I'm opposed to this motion because I think it's inappropriate, and I think this body should discuss an ad hoc subcommittee of the school committee to address our long-term financial situation. And lastly, we received many emails, as many of you know, about this topic, and I can only assume that we may have received public comment, emails sent to the public comment email address, which we do not have access to as individual committee members. So, and public comment is after this agenda item tonight, which I realize I assume was not done intentionally. So I don't think we should vote tonight because we haven't gotten all the input that the public has given us on this topic. So I'm against the motion. I'm opposed to it. I'll vote against it. I also don't think we should vote on it tonight. Thank you.
I do want to interject for 1 second. It was absolutely not intentional to put public comment
Yes,
under. It was more about trying to organize a meeting so people could be done and move forward.
I see. Yeah.
Right. Not about not hearing the public. I would think we should definitely hear from them. Okay. Deb.
Hi. So I have a question and also some observations. The question is, this is a different motion that was attached than the one that was attached to the agenda as I saw it.
Shouldn't be.
I don't think so.
Okay, so obviously that's my bad.
Yeah, I'm reading.
There was a statement before the motion in the
Oh, maybe
document.
that's it.
If
Okay.
you scroll up, there's that statement at the top.
No, this is.
Yeah, that's that statement at the top.
Oh,
That's not part of the
I didn't
motion.
scroll down. Okay. Okay, well, putting that part aside, I agree with the beginning and I agree with the end, but I'm somebody who, if we want to decide the outcome of a committee, we want it to tell us something, then I think the end needs to inform the composition of the committee. One of the things that I have questions about is, yes, why are the chair and vice chair de facto members of this committee? My understanding, very new understanding, is the roles of the chair and vice chair are prescribed, and I don't see that as being part of the overall roles of the chairs and vice chairs of these committees, to be those representatives on this sort of committee. Furthermore, and you know, there's going to be tangling as to who and what, but I am looking for an objective voice or voices in these in these conversations. We do have the collaborative. We do have perhaps MASC if we're interested in tapping that resource. But thinking out of the box, telling us things that we don't necessarily see from the inside is valuable to me. I don't think those people should dictate, but I think they should inform. And I see an important need as we move forward in this multi-year process to access experts in the area. But yes, to make it our decision and not, and I understand the town is got their own context, but it has become very clear to me over the last 4 months that the region, which is what drove the budget statement in the first place, is itself its own municipality and has its own interests. And as such, I don't quite see how that piece fits in with a town-heavy committee who's, and then I guess the last part of what I want to bring forward is there's the financial part. And yes, many of us are new to it, and there has been a learning curve, but we're intelligent people who can figure it out. So accessing the expertise of, or communicating well with finance committees in our towns, I understand. I got the point. I don't need a committee to make that point for me. Yes, we will do it. I believe I will approach this differently next year. But again, the part that I feel is very important to protect is we were elected to represent the well-being of the schools, and the town has many different parts that they have to fit together, and to cede that seat of responsibility is nothing I'm willing to do. Not now, not in any other rendition of such a committee. Thank you.
Let me recount a few events from this year's budget process. We sat here with our educators and voted on an 8% increase to the budget because we conveyed our interest in maintaining the quality of the school. Then we had a 4 towns meeting and we were told it's going to be less, which we adapted to. And we're not even sure that the lower number is even gonna go through. So we certainly hold the interest of the schools, but we hold no power.
Yes.
I am totally confused why this proposal is controversial, because the thing we all seem to agree on is that we need to talk more with our towns so that they understand what the value is in maintaining these programs, what the constraints are from their side, what are the constraints from the education side. And, maybe we can fine tune the composition of this back and forth, but this is a conversation. And by nowhere I read, and maybe I missed it, does it say anything about us giving up the authority to make the decisions for the school budget? We can vote whatever we want. We can do the 8% again and see how well that goes. It's a process by which we have the opportunity to have more conversations with the town, in this case mostly Amherst, although there's officials from the other towns too, to have these conversations earlier and more often, so that when we get to the budget, we hopefully can converge on a number that we all agree. And if there's differences, there has been enough context explained to the decision makers in the towns why we think maybe we need a little bit more, and it's not just a wild request that comes out of nowhere, which was the problem this year. And so I'm open to fine-tuning this, but this seems like exactly what we should be doing.
May I?
Sure.
So,
Do you have a clarifying
I do.
question?
It is difficult for me to separate this statement from the original budget statement that was made in the town budget from the memo that we got a draft for. So some of my reluctance in proceeding is the three parts of that and how to put those together.
Well, a point of order.
Yeah.
That memo cannot be introduced because it's an informal memo. It is not official. It was only communicated as a draft. That it will ever come up is in question.
So that's not a point of order.
But to utilize, what I'm saying is utilizing it as information is not really good. It's not appropriate.
That's not a point of order, and I'm explaining my thinking based on something I've read.
And I'm explaining that. What you-
Okay.
Anyway, doesn't matter.
All right.
Go ahead, I'm done.
Sarah?
I don't think we need a committee at all. I agree that, well, first of all, preparing the budget and looking forward, looking into the future to make sure that we have a school system or systems that are sustainable and are designed in a way that can be implemented is the responsibility of the superintendent. We can make sure, well, it seems to me that the school committee could exercise more control over the budget process and not just wait until a draft appears, whenever it appears. We could have it on our agenda for, once a month is like, what is the plan? Who are you talking to? What kinds of forecasting are you doing? I mean, if it's important to us, we can make it important to the superintendent. It's something we could set as a goal. But I hope, I would insist myself, that she seek out town staff, any town in the region, as needed to get whatever information, financial information, is helpful in both preparing for the coming year and looking ahead. And Doug has already, or his team already did a 3-year kind of estimate and found a 2% gap in the budget. So I don't see why we need a committee. We can make sure that this happens by communicating with our new superintendent.
Irv?
I mean, I appreciate the feedback, but I would like to point out something. In the final analysis, our budgets that we come up with are a budget item on the town's budget. Amherst, any other towns. It is an item that they have to vote on. All right. We have gone back to the town, how many, 2 or 3 times, asking for additional resources. It would seem to me if I were a town council member or the town manager, I would say, wait a minute. Don't you understand that we have provided you all the money that we can? But you're assuming that we haven't. If we keep making those assumptions that they have more money, then we really need to find out if there really is more money and how that money could be better distributed. You know, when the guardrails came up in terms of how we do our finances here in the 4 towns, that wasn't because it came out of nowhere. It came out of necessity of the towns getting together to say, how can we provide a better financial structure for the region? That's where it came from. It didn't just appear out of the nether. It's because they got together and talked about it. That's how we got the guardrails. And what I am suggesting is that the 4 towns get together to look at the financial underpinnings of the schools, go through all the financial arrangements they have, examine them in detail to find out whether or not there's a better way of financing the schools. Are there efficiencies that they can find in their process? Again, I will say it again because it came up. They are not involved in the curriculum, instruction, and staffing, and how we provide education for our children. What they are doing is providing the finances and the financial wherewithal for us to do what we've been elected to do. So don't confuse and say, well, they're going to be involved in our curriculum and tell us how to staff our schools. No, that is not what they're going to do. But don't say to the towns on the one hand, we don't want you involved in our finances. We want to have our own committee. And yet, on the other hand, give us money. That's unreasonable to make that kind of demand. And we also need to know from the town, are you doing everything financially necessary to support our schools? Have you examined all of the ways you're financing? Have you looked at your own budgets in such a way that you do what you've always said is that to put the schools in front? We are almost, 60-something plus % of the budget in the town? But we can't do that if we say to them, hey, we don't want you a part of this committee. We'll just put you to the side. How do we get cooperation and collaboration by making statements like that? Thank you.
William?
I was going to say, I think that, I have not been able to really see a strategic plan or improvement plan for our schools, and I really think the budget should be built out of that. So I think that, I feel like this is jumping, I feel like we need to start working on it today, now, it's important, but I feel like there's other steps that we need to do before we would jump to this. I don't understand how it involves the RSC and the ASC, in that those budgets are different. So why would it be a committee with those two on it? I don't understand that. That confuses me as a person from Pelham.
Are you asking the question of me?
I'm going through my list of things. But I don't feel that if it's 2 of our districts and the superintendent works for 3 districts, why is the other district not there? Why, when it's the region school committee is one whole budget and it's totally separate from the Amherst school budget, why are they combined? And then Pelham school budget is totally separate from those other 2 budgets, so I get why it's not there, but I don't understand why ASC and RSC would be on that committee together. That confuses me. I think a lot of the angst about this motion is also from draft motions that were emailed and sent out, and some people have seen and some people haven't seen. And so I feel like that gives me a lot of angst over voting for any of these motions because of other motions that I've seen that other town members have tried to bring forward. It doesn't, none of it makes sense to me. I feel like our schools are not ran by a mayor. When I lived in New York City, our schools were ran by the mayor. That's a very different system than we have here. Our school is ran by the superintendent, and then the school committee employs the superintendent. Nowhere is the town manager or the town council or the other towns involved in that. So I'm just confused by this whole thing. I do think we should, as Jennifer stated, that we should form a committee of school committee people, and it could even maybe be an advisory, like we have the school equity advisory committee, and we involve other people outside of the school in that. So we certainly could have a advisory committee on the budget where we involved town members to come in. They're not really be voting members, but they would be allowed to come in and go through the committee work where we could, and then they would advise the RSC on what the budget numbers could or could not look like.
Sarah?
Yeah. I don't want to do this a month before our new superintendent arrives, okay? I think initially, it's our responsibility to talk with her about what we want for budget process, what we see as the problems lying ahead, and take it from there and not plop her, another layer of some kind of people to be reporting to or working for. I don't want to do this now, and I already said I don't want to do it at all, that I think we can design a budget process that ensures that the various serious issues, fiscal issues, are addressed sooner rather than later within the budget year of the budget development.
Bridget?
Okay, so I think if I understand the intentionality behind what you're doing, it was a rough budget process for us this year, right? And we're all worried about next year, so I totally get this. But I think educators, building leaders need to be at the forefront in making decisions. We've got school improvement plans that need to be aligned with the outcomes of the budget, and those pieces need to match with each other. And so that's work that's got to be building by building and then committee by committee, right? Then it's our legal responsibility to balance that information, and we're the only ones legally responsible to the voters and under Mass General Law who are required to look out for the educational quality and the fiscal responsibility. Like, that's just us, right? So budgets are our responsibility, working with the superintendent. And I've just heard from so many people, just in like 24 hours of this proposal, who feel like it's insulting to the new superintendent and the school committee to try and put the town manager's office over us, and maybe some are interpreting it like get us in line. Other people are like, do you trust people? Or are you belittling the talent that we have coming on board? So I don't want to be in that. If we need expertise, maybe we need a third-party independent fiscal auditor, or we can call advisors to come to our meetings. And as an Amherst resident, I feel like it feels very decontextualized not to have any fiscal sustainability committee, not be town-wide. We've got problems with our library. Many town departments are up over 6%. Facilities are up 12%. HR is up 14%. I sat in a meeting this morning with a police chief is buying a $1.9 million radio system and $90,000 police cars and has $300,000 a year in overtime. Now, I'm not suggesting those are the exact places to cut. I'm just saying, like, if we're going to have a fiscal responsibility or fiscal sustainability committee in Amherst, if the Amherst town manager wants that, make that for the town, and schools will join and come over and send a couple people to chime in. And so I think really we need the starting point for any conversation to be quality of education we want for our children, and then how do we do that within the money that's there, right? We report to the voters. Most voters want roads and schools, right? And we don't want to like delegate that power. I do think, however, though, that we need to reinvigorate our year-round budget committee, and that we need to look deeply into how we're spending, where we can save money, where our efficiencies are, and maybe hold more I don't really see how this committee is much different than a Four Towns meeting. Maybe we need to have more of those in the course of the year.
Anna?
Yeah, so I think the problem with what the community is seeing and what they're telling us is that the perception is that this type of suggestion is coming from a really disrespectful place. It's coming from a place that suggests that the committee, the RSC, can't handle the finances of the school, and that they need some help and guidance to make a better, sustainable financial plan, because clearly it's not working. The problem is that what we did as a school committee was finally object to the idea that we needed to accept to be terminally underfunded. Every year, we had to make cuts because we implemented guardrails. Every year, Amherst dictated how much they could increase their budget by, and then every other town complied with that request. And we finally said, no, we actually need to keep our teachers. No, we actually need to have all of the money, or we're gonna be wiping out programs that we feel are actually essential. And yes, in their eyes, it happened at the last minute. In their eyes, we surprised them and we sprung it on them at the last minute, and then they were scrambling to try to fix things with very little time to adapt. But we didn't actually spring it on them that quickly. We have a budget that was way in excess of the 4% guardrails. And by showing them where those guardrails are and showing them where the budget cuts are, they see exactly how much money we're underfunded by. And so to suggest that it's the school committee's fault that we can't create a budget that is within the severe underfunding that they suggest is appropriate is a little bit disappointing. And the real problem, as some of the community members have pointed out, is that funding for schools across the state and across the country is not as good as it should be. And that there are things like Chapter 70 for Massachusetts that are not keeping up. And it's placing more and more and more of the burden on the towns as opposed to the state. And that is not the school committee's fault. And we need to do a better job of communicating that type of information to the towns. And we need to do it early, and we need to do it often. And so, yeah, you know, we can create a committee, we can talk to them, and we can, but I feel like this committee is being created out of
Exasperation.
well, out of a mistrustful space, and I think what we need to do is improve our communication, and improve our outreach, and the way that we communicate what all of the different issues are. We clearly need to do a better job with advocacy, because to be able to argue appropriately to the different towns, including Amherst, but all of the 4 towns, why this funding mechanism isn't working the way it needs to for us, and it's not our fault, is something that apparently we need to get better at. So, I do think that this is, I understand where where the urgency is. I do think that this is something that we should probably table and look at later. We're not gonna fix this for this budget cycle. This budget, this 2024-25 budget has nothing to do with this conversation. This conversation, this committee, is for the next year's budget. This is not for this year's budget. This is not going to affect, or it's not going to be built soon enough to have any impact on the 2024-25 budget. And so I do think that we have some time to wait for the next superintendent to come in and to have another conversation with how we want to move forward with outreach to the towns and working with the towns around school budgets. But I do think that maybe this is premature and we should table it and wait for for the superintendent to start.
Tillman?
I'd like to offer a correction for the record. Amherst does not always drive the budget. Early in this year's budget process, Leverett convinced Amherst to go up from 3% to 4% increase.
This year.
I agree with what Sarah said earlier, that all the things that we should do internally, we should definitely do. But we do need to talk to the towns. And yes, we can make all the statements we like about what we value, and we can say that we don't want to be, the town manager's not above us. I'm not sure what the phrasing was. But they are. They determine how much money we have. The select board and the finance board for Leverett decides how much money goes to the school. That's a fact. That's not, us giving up on anything. We have to accept that if we propose a budget that the towns do not want, we cannot get this through. I don't understand why we don't want to talk to the towns. This committee would talk to the towns. There's nothing in there that says that they make any decision for us. And yeah, there's a bunch of people in there, and it might be imbalanced. We can figure out what the right balance is, but why wouldn't we want to talk to the towns about this? That's the place where we can advocate for all the things and explain with time why certain programs are important and why they shouldn't be cut. Instead of having one urgent four towns meeting where we sit here trying to make arguments for why we can't cut the budget without the public being present, even though they were invited, and nobody else saying any word about how important education is. This is the place where this can be done with time.
Jennifer?
So I want to address that question of why is this so controversial and why people are against it. So, yes, it's true, we can do what we want. But if we vote to create this committee, and this committee's job is to recommend a plan, if this committee recommends a plan and we just decide we're going to do whatever we want, we definitely can do that. And we should do that if we don't agree with the plan. But it makes it harder. It's hard, and there will be people who will want to accept the plan because it was made by this committee that we put together. So that's one of the reasons that I'm against it. Another reason I find it to be controversial is that a committee charged with recommending a plan to the school district should not be chaired by the town manager or their designee. I actually don't even want the superintendent to co-chair this. The superintendent's going to have enough to do without managing meetings. And this has to do with what Tillman said and what Irv said about that this committee would not make curriculum decisions and decisions about academic programs. But this motion says, it is suggested that the above committee begins immediately to review the school's short and long-term fiscal challenges, identify the core issues, and recommend a plan. What I don't want is a town council member, a select board member, a finance committee member, I don't know who else is going to be on this committee, to look at our budget and say, oh, well, your core issue is that you have too many electives. Get rid of some of these introductory art courses. That's one of your core issues. I'm going to put that in the plan. That is completely out of their purview. So all of the work that has been discussed tonight that needs to be done can and should be done by a school committee subcommittee that digs deep into our issues, that then engages with the experts and our partners and our municipal partners and at the town level and the state level as needed. But it needs to be a school committee. In my opinion, it needs to be a school committee subcommittee which does what subcommittees do, which is make recommendations to the full committee without committee membership or the committee being led by any of these individuals outside of the school committee. Thank you.
Deb.
So I like everything I've heard, and I do think we need to come together. I do. I'm always somebody to try to find the middle ground, like the space for everyone to be right. And I do understand the pressing need. I do understand the reaction to the stipulation, and we still do have, it was very clear to me that being willing to have these conversations with the town of Amherst is connected to their willingness to fund, to go above the 4% budget that they have not yet voted on. So, and yes, I'm not saying, nobody's saying, well, I'm not saying I don't care what they have to say. I very much want to hear what they have to say, and I want those conversations, but I don't see why that needs to be in this form. I would love to invite them to come here to talk to us, because I think there are things that they want to tell us and that we should be willing to hear. I do believe that my experience at the Four Towns meeting was very different than the experiences of the representatives from the other towns who came to the last Four Towns meeting with a compromise. My town did not, and had not considered meeting to do so. In our caucus, I found that conversation to be extremely uncomfortable. The caucus within the last Four Towns meeting, I didn't have a chance to speak. And when I tried to exercise the option of doing so, I was told that the rest of the representatives were waiting and it wouldn't be fair to keep us waiting. Whereas, of the people who spoke, several of those people spoke several times. One of those people who spoke several times was not a voting member of any committee and spoke at length. And then I believe it was at that caucus or at that meeting where I heard one of my town representatives, and I don't really want to quote this because it's not something that really was not necessarily a considered perspective, but it sticks in my mind every single time I think about talking to the town. And that was, maybe we should do this, as in make all these cuts and show the state what it really looks like. So that was like, no, the state knows what it looks like. And who are we? We're gonna like throw our kids under the bus for how many years and say, see, we told you so? I mean, that just, every single time that probably off the cuff comment comes back again and again and again. And so until I have a more even and balanced conversation about just the bigger picture, I can't do this. It's just not within my sense of my obligation to my sworn duty to the town, to the voters who elected all of us, and that's all I got to say. Thank you. And, okay, there was one more thing. I studied physics in the 80s and 90s. I spent a lot of time with men who thought they knew everything about everything. And so I am understandably extremely sensitive to the idea that traditionally education is considered women's work, which is fine, but that the other departments that are not necessarily considered women's work, the DPW, the fire, and the police, thank you, and public safety are not being asked to do this. So I'm not saying it's sexist, I'm not saying it's patronizing, and I'm not saying it's overstepping, but I love the idea of having a town-wide conversation rather than this conversation. And now I'm done. Thank you.
Irv.
You know, I brought forth this motion because I really, really, really wanted to have this conversation. I really wanted the public to hear this conversation. I desired for the public to hear this conversation. So I am really thankful for the thoughtful comments that have come forth from all the committee members, because this is a conversation that needed to be had. All right, whether the motion failed or passed was immaterial to me. What was really important was the conversation. I really believe in collaboration and cooperation between the schools and the community at large and the town councils, town governments. I believe it. I believe that education gets funded, is successful by the successful collaboration between all of the entities who are directly involved with the financing of the schools. We cannot do it separately. That's not how the town is built. That's not how this whole process is built. If the process said we didn't have to have the town approve this, then it would stop at us. That's not the process. So, again, I appreciate the conversation. I would like to say and leave you with, what happened to collaboration and cooperation? What happened? Did that die on the floor? What happened to it? Why is it gone? Why can't we trust in it?
Anna? Oh, I'm sorry. It's Tillman.
No,
and then-
striking.
Okay, Anna?
So, I thought we had a budget coordinating committee. And I think that's kind of their job, is to coordinate with the town about the budget. Am I wrong about that? So maybe we can turn this committee idea over to the budget coordinating committee, and they can actually have a stronger conversation with the town about this. I think what I'm hearing is that there is a sense that the suggestion of forming this committee comes from a criticizing space, and that the school committee is being told that your budget is too big for our limited financial resources, and somehow the school committee needs to create a smaller budget, and we need to coordinate on how we can make the budget smaller. And maybe that's not where it's coming from. Maybe it's coming from, let's all work together. But my sense is that's not where it's coming from. My sense is that it's coming from a, you need to fix something, and not a, how can we help you space. And so if it were coming from a, how can we help you? How can we, let's have a conversation and figure out how we can make this work for all of us, I would be jumping in on this one. But because it seems like it's coming from a, we need to fix you space, it sets all of our guards up, and we're like, this is wrong, this is not good, I don't want to be a part of this. And so I think what we need to do is sort of take a step back and try to reach out to the towns, and especially to Amherst, because they seem to be the ones who are most urgently requesting some kind of resolution. But to reestablish that communication line and to talk about what we need, what's possible for the towns, what the actual problems are. And the problems are not that in order to maintain a level services budget, our budget actually has to increase by more than 2.5%. And that's just the reality of the situation. And that's not because we are overspending, and it's not because we are overstaffed, and it's not because we are doing things that are excessive. it's because that's what it takes to maintain a level services budget.
Bridget?
Well, first, I just really agree with everything Deb said. The spaces that we went into with our town were incredibly hostile. As an educator, I've never seen a space like that before, where getting the fiscal efficiencies was put above the quality of education. There's always a blending, a melding, a sort of working together. And in this memo that the town manager worked with the town council president and Andy Steinberg
Point
or
of
whatever
order, we
those folks
cannot,
said.
that's not public, it has not been shared with the public, we can't discuss it.
okay.
Okay.
Well, okay,
It's
so
not on our
based,
agenda.
right, what I noticed is that in late drafts, someone off the cuff after finance, after this, that, added academic
We can't
programming.
discuss it.
I don't understand why because it's not on the agenda?
Because it has, we can't.
It's public information.
No, it
It's
isn't
mentioned
public.
in the motion.
It hasn't, yes, but the documents have
It
not been
says right there.
posted to our
What did I say?
agenda.
Okay, so it feels like the intention, okay, I'm with you, Sarah,
Yeah,
I'll try and rephrase. The intention that I see is in the documents feels very much the same as we feel in Finance Committee, where many things are very much put under a microscope on our end, but not in other dimensions as much. And that the academic needs of the community are put on the back burner. And I don't know if anyone's read the report, but there's these huge disparities in pay gaps between departments. The average police salary is like $107,000 a year. I saw it today in the meeting that we were in, and other departments as well. But Amherst has a huge gender pay gap, and in part that relates to the schools. And we're in this time with tremendous teacher shortage. And the teacher shortage actually is boosting the budget problem as we look for contracts and et cetera. So I think we have to really have a detailed and delicate conversation. And if we could have our budget committee work year-round and invite some of those folks in while we have other people bring to the table the issues we were facing, I think that would be collaborative. But just even the way that the appointees were recommended, where the town manager would make the appointees and then appoint these specific people under it, it feels to me like it just was devaluing our work tremendously.
So I put my name on the list because. So I've heard a couple of ideas that I have liked, right? So I think the idea of the group or the motion is a good thing, right? Like, I think we need to have more conversations consistently with our towns. I am very concerned about one of the points Jennifer made about people coming in and looking at our programming and someone saying like, well, you offer 5 languages, how about you just offer 4? Or whatever that could be, because that's not their place, right? Like, we were elected to represent and be in charge and care for the schools and the education and our children. And if somebody else has feelings that they want to do those things, then they should get elected to school committee.
And we have 2 empty seats on Pelham.
But I don't want there to be any even possibility of optics of looking like we are giving that control up. I also think it's very interesting that all of the women have big, yucky feelings about this. And I do also think we have, I also like someone made a suggestion about inviting the towns to come talk to us, right? So they can come talk to us and we can invite them and then we can have those conversations where they're not as, they're hard. Like when you go to the town meetings or whatever they are, they're very challenging, right? And we do have 2 current subcommittees that I think could really look into being in line with these ideas, right? So we have our budget subcommittee, and we have our, I don't remember it's not the liaison. What is it?
Community partnerships.
Yes, that one. right? And so the community partnerships would be a great place to have our towns like create those conversational spaces, right? So I think the ideas here, big picture style, are good. I think more conversation is better. But I think we already have the places to have these conversations, and I think we should do that. Tillman?
I just want to note that the gendered comments do not represent our values for diversity and inclusion. I want to also make sure that if we have somebody reach out, that the towns be included. The examples that were mentioned earlier was that the subcommittee reach out to Amherst. I want to make sure that the other towns are considered too, because we have the problem that there are very simplistic views out there which basically say, well, we approved 6% this year, next year it's going to be 4%, end of story. We don't want to hear anything else. And so unless we have opportunities to explain why we need more because of all the great academic programs that we have, I don't see how we can convey that in one 4 towns meeting in April next year.
Just to make sure, the motion states specifically that curriculum, instruction, all the educational components are out of bounds for this. It says right here, curriculum, in the last paragraph, the charge of this committee will and has no mandate other than the financial underpinnings of the RSC and ASC. Curriculum, instruction, and staffing to achieve educational goals and objectives have and always will be within the purview of the RSC and ASC.
I don't see where that is.
That's not the motion,
That's
it's
not
the
the motion
statement.
that was attached
Well-
to the agenda.
Wait a minute.
It ends there.
Those were your comments.
Right,
I think
so
that's-
it ends
Right.
there.
Oh, yeah, right, well, we heard you say, all right, Vice Chair, it is understood that the town manager, it's in there. Any such committee could be co-chaired. Oh, yeah, those are my comments, that this whole thing is not about the towns controlling us. It is only about the financial conditions of the schools and its financial sustainability. It only says short and long-term fiscal challenges, identify the core issues, and recommend a plan that preserves the excellent education we provide to our children with our limited financial resources. And the thing is that it is co-chaired. But again, look, this is not, the minutia of this is not important to me, all right? What has really been, I really would like to see us pass this motion because I think it adds value. It says that the majority of this committee is going to be school-related people. It's not going to be town-related people. It'll be the majority of us. It says that specifically, all right? But again, it is, we're going to have to find our way to how to appropriately collaborate with those who provide the finances. We're going to have to do that. I don't, and when I hear here is that that's going to be very difficult with this committee. And if that's going to be difficult for this committee to do, to collaborate with those who are providing the finances, I fear that we're in deep trouble. The fall starts our budget process. Before we even get there, there's some decisions that are going to be forthcoming in the next couple of weeks, which are going to tell us how deeply in the red we're going to be and what we're going to be needing to do in cuts for next year. And I fear, from what I hear here, how we are going to proceed and collaborate with the 4 towns to be able to get the finances that we need. given what I'm hearing, I don't know how we're gonna do that, and it saddens me.
All right, so I have William, Jennifer, Bridget, Deb, and Anna. And Sarah? And then I think we should probably move on. We have other things we have to do tonight.
I was just gonna say, I know we're not supposed to talk about the draft, but in this proposal, it says at the very last part, it's understood that the town manager may present a slightly different proposal. Then it says, it is recommended that the differences between those two proposals be reconciled by the representatives of the RSC and ASC. I am not comfortable with what could be proposed by the town to be reconciled by Sarah Bess and Sarah Marshall without it being something that we all decide on.
But it says may.
I
may
understand
never
that, but it
happen.
might happen. So that scares me.
Jeez.
I could not agree to that. That last sentence really bothers me, and I don't think that the chairs have more power than any of the rest of us. And so I don't think that the chairs should be able to vote, to be able to reconcile the differences without the whole committee being able to discuss it and finalize that. I also think that myself, and I think many of us are very open to collaborating and want to collaborate, but collaborating is not letting the town manager co-chairing this committee. Collaborating is coming to a table together and having a conversation and listening and taking advisement, but not having them co-chair. I don't understand how the town manager would co-chair what our budget looks like. Where's the representation from Pelham? Where's the representation from Shutesbury, from Leverett? I don't understand how we would elevate the town manager of Amherst to be a co-chair on this committee. To be at the table, I'm all for that. To be collaborative, I'm all for that. But that's a chair at the table, not co-chairing it.
Jennifer?
I withdraw.
Okay. Bridget?
Well, I was gonna say, first off, that I feel like to say that we're not being collaborative, since I've been on school committee in January, I've attended over 16 meetings related to the budget. And so I just take that personally, and I think it's very unfair. We've been nonstop. I mean, Amherst, more than anyone, requires, there's 3 meetings this week. There were 2 last week, just the number of meetings related to the budget this spring has been intense, and we've been sending multiple school committee representatives to all of them to share our information. So I think that it's incorrect to say we haven't been collaborative.
I have never said that we have been
Okay.
collaborative.
Wait.
She's accusing me of
No,
saying
she's
that.
no,
not.
point of order. No.
I haven't said we
Okay.
haven't been collaborative.
You said, how will we collaborate? We've been collaborating. Yes, Sarah needs it.
All right,
Right.
I'm sorry.
But what I wanted to do was see if we could call the question. I think it's important we take a vote on it.
Yes, I agree.
Are you officially calling the question?
It's a voting call.
I am.
Okay, so we have to vote on calling the question.
Right.
I believe,
Right. If I could, yes. Voting on calling the question means we're voting on ending debate. And if it passes, we immediately vote on the motion.
And
Yes.
it needs
So if you
2/3.
if you don't want to end debate, you would vote no. If you want to end debate, you vote, yes, that's true, it needs a second. And I don't know.
Do we discuss this
It's,
motion?
no,
No.
No, it's no discussion. We go right into a vote.
Do we have to second it?
I second.
Oh, thank you.
Discussion, 2/3.
2/3.
Right.
Okay. We don't have any mover. Okay. All those in favor of calling the question, which means ending debate and going immediately to voting on the motion.
Point of order, is this for Amherst or for the region?
I can only do wait.
Yeah.
Because
you
she's
can
on
only-
both, so I was just asking.
Oh,
Oh,
so
wait,
me.
I think so are you calling it for the region?
I'll call it for the region first.
Okay.
Yeah,
Wait, was the original motion for the region, or was the original motion for Amherst?
it says RSC.
He submitted it to me.
And then Tillman seconded it, so it must be the
So it's-
region.
Must have been region.
Region it is. Thank you. Okay. All those in favor of ending debate, hands up. 6. All those opposed, which means 3. Okay, so we have 2/3, so we're moving for the region directly to voting on this motion. All right, hold on, I will make sure my records are.
Not yet.
Okay. All those in favor for the region of Irv's motion as presented?
All those in favor?
In favor?
your motion.
Yes, of your
My
motion.
yes.
All those opposed to the motion? 7. So the motion fails for the region.
So I don't believe Amherst even has a motion on the floor.
Nope.
And this motion that Irv has presented refers to the RSC, so I don't know. Does anyone want to put this motion on the floor for Amherst?
You don't need to. You can do it in another time.
Well, we're just still, okay, so, no, we have no motion, all right.
Okay.
Amherst is still in session.
I think next up is to adjourn the Amherst School Committee if you have no further.
Right. So I will move to adjourn the Amherst School Committee. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor of adjourning the Amherst School Committee, please raise your hands. And that looks like 5, unanimous. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Okay. I'm going to request that we take a 5-minute break, and then we will continue with the region items. All right.
Yes.
But I didn't get them until it was like tied. I lost after like the last one.
This better be recorded because I wasn't writing down. I was making motions and seconds.
Yeah, exactly. I would say check with Sarah when she comes back and see if she can take it up first, because she might be willing to do that, just given the hour. Their best.
legislature is in the process of passing increased funding. I don't know if it's actually gonna ultimately get passed, but it's looking semi-promising. The result would be that chapter 70 might increase from 30 more to 104.
The librarian who coordinated the high school student lunches gave me the names of the students who were involved, so I just wanted to read them and say thank you to them. Anana Balkin, who was also on the search committee, Gwyneth Blount, Jill Crosby, Eamon Giles McCreary, Marie Gubrium, Julian Hines, Miles Jeffries, Elizabeth McLeod, David Pinheiro-Yacom, Miguel Pinheiro-Yacom, and Daniela Sherman. Ms. Docker said that just over half of them were able to attend all 3 lunches, and nearly all the rest were able to attend at least 2. And I know we heard from the finalists that they really appreciated talking to students. So thank you to those ARHS students.
Excellent. Any further school? Tillman.
Regarding the track and field and Leverett, I will be presenting the various options there at the select board next Tuesday. The CPA funds seem to be on a particular cycle of funding requests and approval at town meetings, so it's unlikely that we can meet those timelines, but I will see if the select board can do some magic.
Thank you. William?
I submitted it the last time, but we didn't get to present it. The Title IX Subcommittee update of the investigation. As a Title IX Investigation Subcommittee, we have been diligently advancing our efforts to enhance safety, inclusivity, and awareness within our schools. Our primary focus has been on reviewing and updating existing policies to ensure they effectively address Title IX related issues, including bullying and harassment. This ongoing process involves identifying areas where changes or additions are needed to better protect and support our students, staff, and community. We're in the process of gathering information on the curriculum currently being used in our schools. This information will help us ensure that the curriculum includes appropriate content related to sexual harassment prevention and reporting, as well as LGBTQ+I representation. One of our key initiatives is planning a 3-part symposium aimed at keeping our kids safe. The symposium will provide valuable insights and guidance for parents, students, and staff on how to address and report concerns related to Title IX. We are particularly excited about the opportunity to host a session with our new superintendent where we will discuss these important matters in greater depth. The committee is reviewing school improvement plans to incorporate measures that address the safety concerns and provide a more inclusive environment. This includes working closely with Policy Subcommittee to propose necessary changes to existing policies and recommend new ones. Our efforts also extend to reviewing the staff handbook to ensure it aligns with Title IX regulations and provides clear guidance on reporting procedures and support mechanisms for victims of sexual harassment or discrimination. Recognizing the importance of equitable representation, we're advocating for community involvement in interview committees to ensure diverse perspectives are considered in decision-making processes. Looking ahead, we are working closely with the superintendent to recommend the establishing of a rapid response teams that can address bullying and harassment concerns promptly and effectively. Furthermore, we are exploring ways to enhance LGBTQ+I representation in our curriculum, books, materials, as we are reviewing our sports team policies to ensure they promote inclusivity and equity. As we continue our work, we are mindful of the questions that remain unanswered. We are actively seeking to clarify what students, parents, and staff are supposed to do in the event of a Title IX related concern. We're also considering how these responsibilities may have changed from the previous year on what specific changes the district has made to address Title IX issues. In conclusion, the Title IX Investigation Subcommittee remains steadfast in its commitment to creating a safe, inclusive, and supportive environment for all members of our school community. Through our ongoing efforts, we aim to address Title IX related concerns comprehensively and ensure that our schools are places where everyone feels valued and respected.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I just wanted to ask William if you would send that to the chair to be posted in this meeting, because I reading as opposed to hearing helps me.
Yeah.
Thank
It was
you.
posted at the last meeting.
Oh,
Yeah.
So,
I'll attach it to this one.
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
If
I
you
already
want
wrote
to
it down.
reflect on it.
Sarah?
Can we ask questions about that work, or would you rather not? It's fine, I can speak private.
Yes.
Why don't you come to our next meeting and ask questions?
I'll wait.
Okay.
Time is late, it's fine.
Yeah. Warrants?
Oh,
Yes.
another update.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I will be attending U.S. Senator Jim McGovern's office hours at the Bangs tomorrow at a time I'm not remembering at the moment, with the hope that we can get some end of the year fiscal relief for any of our capital budgets. I have a little binder to bring along. And yeah, thanks to the community member who brought that to my attention.
Bridget?
So I'm also attending. I RSVP'd for that, but I wanted to do maybe three quick committee updates. One is we met with the president of Amherst College, and I'm forgetting her exact title, but Sarah Barr, who's basically the vice chancellor for community relations. I would say that it was a positive meeting, and we started to make some collaborative discussions around two ideas. But we are going to not act on anything game-changing until the new superintendent is in place, so we made plans to meet again in July. About the equity subcommittee, we reworked the charge a little bit. We have a one-pager that we're gonna bring back to this meeting on a future agenda, and we're gonna do some outreach to broaden our scope and our membership in the fall. And we just received a report from a recent graduate thesis on discipline disparities in the Amherst schools. And sadly, the data has gone down quite a bit. has gone up or in a negative direction in terms of the discipline disparities. So we'll be talking about those on our next meeting on Monday, June 17th, and we're going to reach out this week to the superintendent. I owe him an email to see if he could send someone to talk with us about what plans are in place, if any, to address those.
Thank you.
And the very last thing I should mention is Sarah Bess and I attended a budget meeting today. The Amherst town manager seemed interested in giving the 6%, but with that extra 2% as a gift. And he suggested that maybe it would come out of the Fort River Solar Project. The committee encouraged him to look for it in other places, and as we discussed earlier, we received a pretty negative reaction to the situation of the schools at present in the financial department. That committee, we're going to keep collaborating and working with them. So.
Okay.
Warrants?
Warrants.
Okay. On 5/1/2024, I, William Shore, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $658,397.19. It includes general fund expenses of $658,397.19. I, William Shore, authorized by my signature to the high school student activities transfer in the amount of $24,513.65 for the high school transfer dated 5/6/24. On 5/8/2024, I, William Shore, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $232,453.70. This includes general funds expenses of $89,895.37, revolving fund expenses of $44,584.63, grant fund expenses of $40,934, gifts totaling $56,740.70, tailings $299. I, William Shore, authorized by my signature to the amount of $816,543 dated 5/15/2024, and that was for payroll. On 5/15/2024, I, William Shore, authorized by my signature payables in the amount of $166,542.48. It includes general fund expenses of $162,476.63, revolving fund expenses of $518.85, and tailings of $3,547. That one. Hold on. Nope, it's the same one. Hold on. This last one may not. It's done this to me before where it doesn't clear. Oh, here it is. I, William Shore, authorized by my signature in the amount of $844,135.48 dated on 5/29/2024, and it was for payroll. I don't know how I dated it. I signed it today, 5/28, sorry.
Perfect.
But in it says it's dated tomorrow, but I signed it today.
Excellent. So we have no gifts and,
Point of order.
yep.
2.5 hours.
So I would like to make a motion to extend it for 30 minutes because we have people that have come to make public comment for us, and we have to vote on the band entrance transfer stabilization.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of extending 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all those opposed? All those abstaining? Okay, so we have 30 more minutes. So we have no gifts and no minutes, so public comment. Would any members of the We have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Vincent O'Connor. I live at 175 Summer Street in Amherst. I want to say first about Amherst College, access to good information about how to proceed within the boundaries of the college's mission to obtain funding, and that it will be going on in the next year. Second, I would urge the Regional School Committee to encourage the acting superintendent to take steps that assume a 6% budget will be available, plus whatever Senator Comerford can add with her good offices. And that probably in the month following, before the budget is adopted by the state, that I think it's useful to have those steps taken rather than waiting until July 1st to find out what happens. Finally, I read both of the town manager's draft memos. And if you contact the Amherst Indy, you could probably read them there tomorrow or sometime soon. I was astounded that such a proposal with transparently clear racist and misogynist purpose could emerge from the Amherst town manager or town hall. Its offensiveness at many different levels is so clear that it is, I have never seen anything like it in the 50 years I've lived in Amherst, including very extensive references to curriculum. I would remind the Regional School Committee that the ultimate funders of the schools, both at the local and regional level, are not the officials who sit in the Amherst Town Hall, but the taxpayers of this town, including tenants like myself who pay quite high rents that include taxes. And I would just encourage anyone who's a public official to be mindful of the fact that, as the town manager will certainly be, that whatever you put in writing and send out by email is not likely to remain private.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kathleen Mitchell. I am an Amherst resident with 2 children at Fort River, one who will be in the middle school next year. I had come to sort of talk about the financial stability proposal. Many of you articulated very eloquently what my thoughts. I will just say, as a parent and a community member, I think there's a significant amount of distrust right now in terms of some of the town councilors and the finance committee members having the best interest of our children at heart. And it's not because we're naive or because we expected them to just turn over a large sum of money without question. It's because of the rhetoric and the comments that we have heard come from our elected officials in various meetings. And I think it's hard to hear that and then continue to think that these people are going to put the needs of our children ahead of other needs. I think the memo and the draft that many people in the public have now seen that has come, the draft memo from the town manager, just made that distrust even deeper in the details of the memo itself and the timing of it, in terms of it at least being perceived as you know, we will consider this 6% if you will agree to let us have this level of control going forward. I've no idea their intent. I'm just saying I think that is how the public is reading this. And so I think a lot of us understand that financial planning has to be something that is going forward, put top of mind, and collaboration is necessary. But I think you all have done a fabulous job over the last few months advocating for the budget, explaining the complexities. And I think you are the people who need to lead that charge. And our new superintendent, who many of us are very excited about, and Dr. Slaughter, who's also done a fabulous job. So those are just my thoughts, and I just wanted to add that context because I think that's what parents that I am talking to are really feeling right now. So thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
So my name is Georgia Malcolm. I work at the high school. So I just really want to say thank you to all the school committee members because you guys are doing an amazing job. And I think you represent what true leadership is about, because what we have to remember is what has happened with the budget didn't happen now. It's been ongoing for like a decade. And you guys are owning it, even though you never created it. And I look at you now to probably come up with solutions, right? Working collaboratively with the new superintendent. And also love the fact that, Tillman, you're outnumbered. There's like all these women, so it's like, I just love woman power. So there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3. I know there was a lot of conversation about Dr. Herman. I think Jennifer mentioned it about her assistant. I hope she's having a say, because I think that's really important in her deciding who her assistant is going to be. Also, I know there was mention of her mentor, which you guys didn't seem to be aware of, and I really think it's important. Also, that should be a collaborative decision, because we want her to succeed, and we want her to be working with the best people. I think Mr. Rhodes said whether she's ready or not, and I can assure you, she will be ready. She's not some lackey. She's a very strong, intelligent woman, and trust. I think she can probably get a lot of people that she's just gonna, she's super intelligent and smart. In terms of Paul Bockelman, I found an email from Mr. Bockelman dated 2010. I didn't bring the sheet here. It was a continuum. And he basically said, we're nowhere close to that. Well, fast forward 4 years later, this idea with this committee, it's problematic because it's like this black woman is coming to be the superintendent. She ran a district in the Virgin Islands, probably double the number of students we have here. She knows what she's doing. This is not her first rodeo. And trust and believe she's going to turn things around. That's why she was hired. And everyone, collaboratively, you mentioned about a budget process. I think one of the budget process that a colleague of mine mentioned who is on the school committee at Belchertown is that no new hires get done without the school committee being aware of it. Because the reality is that if you have a budget and then you're hiring a ton of people, right, it's going to affect the budget. So I'm trying to be calm, and I'm not, I'm really trying to just stay on point. But I just want to say we really appreciate the work you're doing and advocating for the schools. And I really hope Mr. Bockelman, in order to give her a leg to stand on or just to start off on the right track, will approve the 6% because I think it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. You're up.
Okay. Sorry, the band interest, yes.
There were no recorded.
What?
Sorry, I was asking if there were any audio.
Oh, no.
Public comments.
No, thank you. There were, thank you, Tillman.
I saw one, but I didn't listen to it. I don't know if it's for us. For RC.
outrage at the egregious power grab that is the Amherst Town Manager's School Fiscal Sustainability Working Group proposal. The ink is still wet on the contract with Dr. Herman, our new superintendent, and Paul Bockelman and some Amherst Town councillors are trying to take control of the school budget before she even gets here. This is a blatant effort to undermine her and needs to be called out as such. I've been following school budgets closely for the past 8 years. In that time, I watched former Superintendent Michael Morris and Finance Director and current interim Superintendent Doug Slaughter lead the district toward this fiscal cliff. Yet at no time did Paul or the council step in and try to usurp their power. But now that a black woman is about to take the helm, they are interjecting with this appalling action. It is highly inappropriate. Was this discussed with Dr. Herman during her interview and contract negotiations? I doubt it. And if this group is formed as proposed, I wouldn't be surprised if Dr. Herman changes her mind or indeed looks into legal action for breach of contract. The Amherst regional budgets would most certainly benefit from an external forensic line-by-line audit, benchmarking each area of spending against comparable districts to identify ways to reduce the high per-pupil cost while providing a quality education within the resources available. You could also undertake an effort to actively market the school's offerings to families who have chosen charter, vocational, or private schools to try to attract those families back to Amherst and reduce the number of new families that leave. During the community forum, Dr. Herman shared many ideas about how to retain families in district. And I expect she will have many ideas about how to manage spending. She needs to be given a chance. You and Dr. Herman do not need the Amherst Town Manager, the Town Council President, and other town councillors telling you how to run the schools. School budgets and academic offerings are the purview of the school committee and the superintendent, not the manager and council. This proposal from Paul Bockelman, with edits from councillors Lynn Grismer and Andy Steinberg, is unacceptable, and I hope every member of the school committee calls it out for what it is and does not give it validation or credence. Thank you.
There was one from the 6th. Was that yours?
I'm sorry?
One from the 6th that we didn't get to last time. Do you know if that was yours?
I don't remember. I'm sorry.
We'll see. All right.
I haven't heard any of it.
Regional School Committee, I am glad to hear the track renovation plan is moving forward. However, an east-west orientation should be part of the plan, or we lose some usable playing time due to visibility problems. Now that the artificial turf has been dropped in favor of natural grass, regional towns that oppose turf and withheld funds should step forward. Have the colleges pledged any money? Thank you, Renata Shepard, Amherst.
Okay. Thank you for the reminder, Tillman. Okay, now ban interest stabilization.
So we have a capital stabilization fund, which we move funds into periodically. We will probably in June move some funds into that revolving fund for the purpose of replenishing aspects of it. We can also use it as a resource for capital projects. But nonetheless, one of the things that we do every year from that fund is pay the interest part of our borrowing. So we've not done a bond in a while. We have one that's finishing up, but we borrow money on a short-term basis, so a BAN, which is a bond anticipation note, which is sort of a miniature version of a bond. It's not as full-blown as a bond. But in that process, we have the principal that we pay back in full and the interest that we accrue over the course of the year. In the current year, that interest is $16,905.56, and we use the stabilization fund to pay that bill. And so this is the formal act that moves the money from the stabilization fund to the general fund for payment purposes. And so there's a motion at the bottom of this. This is a bit of a formality, but nonetheless, it is a thing that you guys have to take formal action on, and the treasurer asked me to bring this to you for that purpose.
Jennifer?
I move to approve the fiscal 24 disbursements from the Capital Stabilization Fund as shown in the Treasurer/Interim Finance Director memo dated May 14th, 2024.
I second.
How much outstanding debt do we have?
Sure, ask the tough questions.
And can
Drawing
I
blank.
rephrase my question? So it's not so much important what the number is. I guess my question is, if we have nearly $500,000 in positive balance in our account, why are we not using it to pay off more debt and then pay less interest? You know, I'm not saying one thing is the right thing or not, but I'm just trying to understand what the trade-off is between carrying a positive balance and then.
Right, so I think that, you know, when this grew to this size, there were really two projects that were in mind. We haven't revisited this in a while, so I think it's worth revisiting that. One is the track and fields project, is whether there should be some money or could be some money available here that we could leverage perhaps. And the other is the middle school roof. And again, you know, anticipating it would take a few years. It's taken more than a few years to get into the MSBA process, but this would be a way to offset some of that cost as inflationary pressure. So we've got both of those as potential candidates for some of this resource. And so I think as we go ahead on the track project, we can think about, you know, this as a resource for funding a bit of it if we want to, for sure.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. All those in favor of approving the motion? Excellent. The motion is unanimous, 9-0-0. FY25 budget update is next on our list.
Yeah, I think, well, if it's okay. I was just going to say, Bridget really kind of gave you the update. We were at both Sarah Bass, Bridget, myself, were at the Amherst Finance Committee today. I think the key thing that I heard was that, you know, they're looking for ways to fund at 6%. I think the concern that they're really worried about is sort of what's the resource for that? And there's a few different options available to them. I think they're mulling over what those are. Is it a circumstance where they fund this but then defund something else, or do they take it from some other source? Or and so they were asking the manager as well. He proposed one idea, but was, you know, I didn't think he necessarily advocated that as the only solution, but a solution. So they'll continue that conversation on Friday. So I think there's a willingness to fund at this level, just I think for the sake of you know, 3 other communities have voted for it, and the understanding of the complications it poses for all 4 towns, separate from the financial impact on the regional schools. I don't mean to diminish that in any way, but I think also the real concern for the Finance Committee is the idea of where is this, you know, the sort of source of funds, and then what and how does this impact future years, and the concern about meeting that obligation in subsequent years.
William?
So, just quick question, Doug. I know you had said that if 3 towns passed the budget, then it passed, but all 4 towns had to approve the assessment method. So when I heard that Bridget said that they might do it as a gift, does that fail the assessment method? And so then we have to go back to the 4 towns?
No, so
because the assessment method wouldn't be a gift.
Right, so in the circumstance, I was rereading this recently, so if they vote the budget number and don't take a specific motion on the assessment language, they tacitly approve the assessment method, because they're committing to a funding level that matches the assessment method. If they take up the language of the assessment method specifically, they do have to pass that, regardless of what they do with the numbers, because you have to have both pieces for it to be a budget. So I hope it's sort of.
But if they passed it as a gift, then they're not agreeing to our assessment method, and then it would fail the budget. Because if they don't pass, if they just ignored it, then it's not really going to be a gift next year. That's going to be the way it was assessed.
They can call it whatever they want to call it. If they vote the amount that's being assessed, and they don't take up so source of funds isn't a factor. So whether they want to call it a gift or not call it a gift is semantics, I think, is the way I would say it. It will be a very central part of the conversation when we come to do fiscal 26, but I'll come back to that in a second. But as far as, approving a fiscal 25 budget, if they vote the assessment amount and don't take up the assessment method language specifically, but they vote the assessment amount, that passes the budget. That it is an implied approval of assessment method when you vote the assessed amount. If they take up both of them, then they need to pass both of them to get the budget passed. So it requires you, anytime you use an assessment method other than the statutory method, you have to have unanimity amongst all 4 towns. And that can be done with individual votes on the assessment language and the budget number, or you can just vote the assessment amount. If they appropriate that assessment amount, regardless of source or whatever, and don't actively make a choice about the assessment methodology, they're still tacitly and empirically approving that assessment method
One
too.
quick follow-up. If they did state that it was a gift and not, like they passed the number, but they specifically wanted it to be a gift, and so the assessment method would be different, would that not fail the budget? Like if they didn't pass the assessment method because they don't agree with it, because they want it to be a gift and not?
Yeah, if they take up the language of the assessment method, which says, it'll be done by a 5-year average of the minimum local contributions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If they fail that explicitly, they failed the budget, regardless of what they appropriate. Because that has to be agreed to if they expressly and explicitly take up that.
And do the town managers all understand that language from you?
Yes, I hope so. I've
Okay.
shared that a
Just
couple of
asking.
times to be
Okay.
very explicit about that, but yes.
Yeah.
They know exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, so I believe the Finance Committee will vote on the regional budget next Tuesday. And, I mean, whether they approve it and whatever the it is, 4%, 6%, something else, council will still get to vote. But we certainly would hope it's endorsed by the Finance Committee.
Jennifer?
Just to be clear, following up on William's question, does the town council know that if they vote to give us this gift, then they should just not vote on the assessment method? Because that would, is that what you're saying? Like, if we want this to work out and they decide to give us a gift, they should vote the budget, and then they should just not take a vote on the assessment method? And do they know that?
They do know.
They're not compelled to take a vote on the assessment method. If they vote the amount assessed via the assessment method, they're tacitly approving the assessment method. So whether
Okay,
they call it a
gotcha.
gift or not, it doesn't matter, is I guess the way I would say it. The other thing is, in thinking about this, and I want to be clear on this as well, is that we have an assessment method. So people say, oh, does it build the base, da-da-da. We use the previous year as a reference point. We reference it in our agreed to assessment method as a boundary, a guideline. But the actual assessed amounts are driven by a formula of minimum local contributions, a 5-year average of that, and a 5-year average of students. And so if, by some quirk, we had a tremendous amount of other resources that came available to us, some other fund, the amount to be assessed to each of the 4 communities would be, we start with what do we think it's going to cost us, we subtract out all the sources of funds like Chapter 70, et cetera, and what's left we assess to the 4 towns. Well, if suddenly that sort of top part of the revenue chart got a whole lot better, I'm not saying it's going to, but if it did, then the amount to be assessed could go down. And the other thing to keep in mind is that because of the assessment method, those change every single year because those averages change each year. And, even with a 5-year averaging, the amount, sort of the percentage of the total that a given town might pay can change by a couple of percentage points, which can be a big swing in cost to any community. So even with the averaging, we still can get peaks or valleys depending on what happens with those minimum local contributions and the others. So we shouldn't presume that the sort of base is locked in some way and that the assessment number is some fixed percentage of the total. It's a variable every single year as to how much. And so if something, if we were to have a sudden drop in enrollment in one community, or we had a sudden significant change in minimum local contribution. So if we had some.
I'm sorry, Doug, point of order. I'm just going to interrupt you. Thank you. I think I was just asking questions about those two specific motions, and we're on a tight
We only have
timeline. I
6
don't want to lose mine, so thank you. Thank you for explaining. I got that.
Any further FY25 budget updates? Yep. Anna?
Do we have any estimates of cuts? So we know that even at 6%, we still need to cut like 7, maybe 8 FTE. And the community and everybody else has been begging to know what those are likely to be.
I think what I'll say is, I'm laying on the educational professionals in the buildings to sort of work their way through that. I will say that they're looking at certain restorations by virtue of just need. For example, one of the reductions at the high school was a special education teaching position. The numbers don't work. They can't get the class sections in a way that work. That's one that's going to have to come back. I think they're looking at guidance at the high school is another one that's coming back. I think similarly at the middle school, they're looking at the restoration of the adjustment counselor. But it's a fluid circumstance, so it's still, even if we were to lock in on 6% right now, they're still working through the details of that as we speak, because they're working through schedules and what can and can't be done with that. So I think they're in process, and when we get to this point, it starts to be specific dollars. We use pretty generic numbers in the budget, so it gets to be pretty specific dollars related to individual staff at this point.
All right. FY25 FY24 third quarter budget update.
So, what I'll say here, hopefully you've had a chance to review this probably ad nauseum because it's been on the agenda a couple of times. So I'll sort of cut to the sort of critical components of this. Long story short, although there are areas of the budget that are really in a bad way at the moment, there are other areas that are in much better shape, and so the long story short is I think we're fine as far as finishing out the fiscal year and being on budget at the close of fiscal year. When we come back in June, we'll probably move some resources around to sort of balance out some of these areas. Just to speak to these, special education, part of that's certain staff that we've not been able to hire, and so we've had to do contracted services. We've had extraordinary expense in that area as well. We have more kids in out-of-district placements than we anticipated or were expecting at this point in the year. Insurance is showing at like 92.5%. That's pretty high, but we're actually pretty close to sort of finishing our payments for the fiscal year, so that's okay. Central administration is the things that you might think of. Some of the expenses related to last year's investigations, legal expenses, those are really drivers in that area. There have been some other expenses around some new software for the HR department, some things like that. And what's the other one? Facilities, a couple of pieces there. That may settle a little bit. It may not be quite so bad. It's at 102% right now, I think, if I'm reading it right, or am I saying?
155.
No, it's 155. There's part of that that's new, based in the new contract for trash removal. That's not exclusively all that's in there. There's some contracted services in lieu of being able to hire some staff that are there. And of course, our substitutes at the top is really the only area of the salaries it's in a bit of a bind. And again, it's okay. It's not horribly off. It's higher than we expect, but nonetheless still manageable. But again, the short story is we anticipate the resources that we have available between now and the end of the year will be able to cover the expenses that we anticipate. And so we will need to move some things around, but otherwise we should be fine. Happy to answer any questions.
About special ed, I heard what you said in terms of explanation. For next year's budget, is the number for special ed based on the budgeted FY24 amount or the actual expended FY24 amount as far as we can predict it?
So we try to anticipate, so with special education, there's sort of two parts to this. So we obviously, some of this is driven by staff we want to hire to sort of be fully staffed. So we're still holding open those positions in anticipation of filling those and having those staff, because they're much cheaper than our contracted services. And so when we budget contracted services, there's some things we're always going to contract. They're just too specialized. We're not going to do. I think as far as our anticipation relative to like out-of-district placements for some of our more high-needs kids, that's one we're going to have to watch really closely, because what we were expecting when we put this together 5 or 6 months ago and what's played out this spring is got me a little worried, to be perfectly honest. I think we can manage it, but we're going to have to be very, very diligent from right at the beginning of the fiscal year around supporting those kids in those placements. And we're ever hopeful we can get some of those kids to return back to our district if we can, because that helps us ultimately. But we try to anticipate how many kids we'll have placed and what those costs will be. Right now, we're trending a bit above that right at the moment, so I have some concern moving into next year.
Thank you.
I have Jennifer, Deb, and Sarah, but I feel like there were more hands that went up and down quick.
You can cross me off.
Okay.
So Q3 of fiscal '24, that's July '23 through March '24 year to date. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. So which line would include any payments made to the previous superintendent and assistant superintendent?
Salaries would be mostly where it would be.
Mostly?
If there was something that was,
I'm sorry, I meant severance payments.
yeah, it would all be in
Salaries.
salary.
Okay, thank you.
Deb?
For contracting out services that we haven't been able to fill in-house, is there a process for resolving that going forward? What can you talk a little bit about efforts made to recruit or raise a salary to attract other candidates or any candidates?
I think in the short term, it's less about salary, because
Yeah.
we're competitive with other districts, if not better than a lot of other districts. Some of it's about supply. And there are folks that are in the marketplace, obviously, but don't want to be, the employee of a school district. I think we're not alone. If you talk to any school district, we had Faye Brady here, she'd say everybody that's in her role is struggling with the same kinds of complications as far as trying to find staff. There's been a shift. People have opted to modify their careers in ways that's different than in the past. So, there's a point where we don't hold positions open any longer. We just book the expense, but, and there's some of that shifting that we've done, but there's still several positions we're hopeful to find. I think the other thing, with a number of districts experiencing reductions that, like we have, that actually helps us potentially find people that can fill those spots. So, that's another piece of the puzzle.
Could you give me a ballpark estimate of what the contracting out compared to hiring in, just the ratio of the two costs? No is a reasonable answer.
It kind of depends on the job that we need to hire for.
Okay, so no. Yeah, okay, thanks.
They can be really a lot more expensive or just somewhat more expensive. It just kind of depends.
Okay, thank you.
Bridget?
I just wondered, that 157.9% in special ed, will that number come down from circuit breaker, and if so, like at what percentage?
We've applied circuit breaker. So no, not from circuit breaker. We've already applied that. What will reduce that will be, so at the very bottom of the chart, you see the 1,157,736 with brins around it, which is a negative number. That's ESSER support. That sort of generically sits in that line, but will get applied across this as we apply more of those ESSER funds to balance out our budget. We can't do it exactly. It's not a one-for-one. It's a bit of a, because ESSER funds can't be used for every purpose. So there's a bit of a domino effect as we sort of work our way through this to reduce those expenses. And then there are other resources in other areas that we're underspending. So like the food service, $150,000, that'll probably go into special education as a straight, because we won't need to support food service with that 150. So that'll just be an available budget that can go immediately against that special ed line.
And is there any chance of rollover in ESSER funding? Like, Is there any chance at the end of the year you'll have rollover that can go towards next year's budget off ESSER?
That's the puzzle we're trying to figure out now, right? So that'll be part of when we come to you in making some of the moves around, as far as shifting some of these budget amounts. You know, obviously, if we don't need that resource, you know, there's trade-offs. Like, we could spend ESSER money and then maybe put more money in, you know, use less school choice, or we could use, or build balance in our revolving fund. And so we have to trade off between building ESSER, or E&D funds, I'm sorry, versus utilizing ESSER funds. But either way, we'll either use it now or later, and then, but we have to strike a balance also with what's been approved budget-wise. So, you know, the budgets that you guys have passed, that we're looking to get the final vote from Amherst on, that's a sort of ceiling of what we can spend, regardless of what revenue we bring in. So that does limit us in that way, and to spend more than that requires approval from the other towns. However, grant funds like ESSER are not appropriated, and so we can spend those funds, I don't want to say without constraint, but we have fewer constraints as far as getting permission from everybody.
I got you, thank you.
Deb, you have one more question?
Yeah, in terms of watching the Senate budget and looking at differential costs or differential returns to the district, I have a hard time teasing out what the 75% transportation reimbursement would, what that would translate into dollars for us. I know it's not passed yet, but it's just trying to fill my mental bucket of dollars.
Yeah, so the 80%, 75, 80% that has been proposed is pretty much right where our revenue estimate of 950,000, that's kind of right in that neighborhood. So we took a conservative estimate, anticipating they wouldn't be able to support transportation at quite the level they have the last couple of years. So the last couple of years, they bumped it up about 90 or a little above. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head. So when we put the number in for this year, and we were conservative in previous years and sort of had resource, which then flows ultimately into E&D. But when we estimated the number for this year, that's about where we're at.
So 0, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then one more? Oh, where'd it go? Rural aid, 17.5 instead of, I'm not remembering the differences.
So there was in the House budget,
Yeah.
they bumped up Chapter 70, but then they cut
Right.
rural school aid in
Yeah.
half, which actually was a net negative for the regional school district. In the Senate budget, they bumped up both.
Yeah,
And 15 million is the current year.
Yeah.
So go to 17.5 is a little bit of a boost for us. Not huge money.
an FTE, I mean, not
No,
even.
it's not nearly that much.
yeah.
I mean, the difference for us between 15 million and 17.5 million is
Yeah.
going to be 20 grand, maybe?
Are
Okay.
you talking about FY '25?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, that's not what this is. We're, right?
I'm
This is a
sorry, my
report.
my
Okay,
apologies.
we're just
Sorry.
about out of time.
Alright. Any further budget questions? Superintendent's update.
Make sure I'm still, no, that's not what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Sharing the right thing? I am sharing the right thing. Okay, sorry. So, I'll be extraordinarily brief. So graduations are coming up. Summit Academy is graduating this Friday. The full high school graduation is on the 7th. It's at the Fine Arts Center this year and not at the Mullins Arena. That puts a little bit of a restriction on total tickets. I've not gotten information about tickets and how that plays out for
What time is
you
it?
guys. Sure, ask the tough question.
What did
It's in the evening on the 7th. I don't remember. I
The
want to say 6 or 7, but I don't know off the top of my head.
I do.
That's like forever ago. You know. Summit Academy's graduation is at the Monson Library, and it'll start at 9:30. They kind of do a full morning event. It's really, really a great event if you get an opportunity to go. It's very small and very intimate, but very, very worthwhile to get to if you can. Track and field update. one suggestion, obviously from a lot of different sources, to reach out to CPA in other communities. You know, in looking at the more recent numbers from the, from our designers, you know, it potentially promotes some opportunity for, you know, kind of carving out a piece that could be asked for separately in a CPA ask. We're going to explore that. I have a meeting with some folks at the town to talk through some of those ideas later this week. So we're going to try to think through that and see if that's an option that makes some sense. Most likely, unless, you know, unless the, you know, one of the other three towns is going to take something off cycle and have a special town meeting, which is really unlikely. They're not very likely to do that. Probably do it in the spring, but that might still fit, depending. It would be a separate standalone piece that we'd have to fund that way. And then the other thing I'll just share about the track project is the council referred it to Finance Committee for review. The proposal, you know, we made a couple of requests. It's like, hey, can you take a look at these? They directed the Finance Committee to look at it, but also to get back to them so that they can take action by the 17th of June, which is when they'll, I think, technically vote the full budget. So, you know, the Amherst Finance Committee is looking at those options and whether or not they think they can do that or want to do that. Variety of opinions amongst the town councilors about how they feel about those different options. So that's still playing out. I think I'll stop there.
Anna?
I just wanted to report that at the Shutesbury town meeting, it seemed like extra town meeting was in the cards. And so there may be another town meeting in the fall or winter for Shutesbury. So just to put that on our radar as if we want to submit something for CPA funding. And I don't know how the CPA funding cycle works, but there may be a town meeting.
Thank you. Jennifer?
So Doug, I watched the May 20th Town Council meeting that you presented at where they voted to refer the motions to the Finance Committee. And I was disappointed that you didn't clarify and correct some misconceptions and mistaken assumptions that some of the town council members shared. Councillor Haneke expressed frustration with the region several times. She said she was frustrated because she felt that the school committee was again putting the town council in a position where we need them to make a decision on a tight time frame. She said everything seems to be an emergency with them, meaning us. She also stated that, quote, the school committee seems to have given up on asking the other towns for funding, and that the school committee uses the other towns have a town meeting so we can't go to them as what I now see as a frustrating excuse. That's what she said. Her comments weren't responded to at all in the meeting, and I feel frustrated at the characterization of the school committee as having given up on asking the other towns for funding when we did inquire about this and you advised us against doing that. I'm also frustrated that the superintendent said, and members of this body agreed, that it can't hurt to ask Amherst for this extra money. I disagreed with that at the time, and I thought it could hurt to ask, and I think it has hurt us in the mild disparagement by town councilors of this committee as creating the need for quick decisions, giving up, and making excuses. So I'm interested in hearing, Doug, what your thoughts are on all of that.
Well, I think there were other opinions at the town council of not being upset with the school committee relative to asking for the reoriented track, because there are those that feel like that's the best option for the investment in that capital program. I think as far as, you know, as far as the particular counselor that scolded you guys, I think she was off the mark in the fact that it's really me, because it's you know, you guys aren't going to apply to the CPA. That's not a role or responsibility that you guys have. So I took those remarks as critical of my time and energy and, you know, and availability. But I also pushed back on the notion that of the timing, because the thing is that to have done the CPA in this cycle, which would have required sending applications to some of the communities before the end of December, some are later than that, some are earlier than that. We didn't have clarity about where we were relative to the interior field surface, and partly that has been driven by actions taken by Concom and the Amherst Conservation Commission and the Amherst Board of Health have taken proactive steps relative to field surface and impact, which happened after the beginning of the year, which changes the dynamic. It's not to say you couldn't do an artificial surface, but it would be extraordinarily much more difficult at this point. That's separate from the funding question, which we don't have that either. So I think there's a timing thing that has been forgotten across there, which I think is that was, you know, a piece, and I didn't want to, you know, argue semantics. I did push back on that point a little bit. I'm not sure that they necessarily agreed with that or felt that was the case. And I also think that, you know, while I could have said it, you know, it really isn't your responsibility to fill out CPA applications, it's mine. There were only so many hours to be had to fill out those applications, and the timing of it was such that we couldn't meet the deadlines of CPA in those communities with clarity on an interior field surface. So it wasn't time well spent have done that at the time, because we didn't know how that was going to play out. So, you know, I think I think that was their personal perspective on your work as a committee, both whether it's related to the track project or related to the budget generally, but I don't know that that's the majority of the council that feels that way. I didn't get that sense from others on the committee that pushed back and pushed for other, you know, other options that we put in front of them.
Dylan?
I just want to report that Leverett seemed appreciative of the fact that we're asking them about what options, you know, they think they're interested in and if they can contribute. But I wanted to ask Doug, what's the date where we have to, like, really decide so that the track is ready for fall 25? By which point we need the money in the bank and fully committed for go.
So from the standpoint of the designer needs clear instruction by June, you know, by the end of June, essentially. They need a clear instruction about what to design. Because if we don't give them that, then they can't sort of meet the timing. And they've been willing to push back a little bit because they feel like, you know, given where the bidding has been on recent projects, there's more capacity for that. But we don't, once we get that design, we don't actually need the money in hand until we actually go to bid the project, which will be late fall. So there is some time to find some other resources. There's ways we can structure the bidding process if we have you know, other options that are playing out over the course of the fall. I guess I would try not to be too vague there, but for example, if we were to say, oh, we'd like lighting, but maybe that's something we can fund with CPA funds from Leverett. I'm not putting it all on you guys, but just to, you know, and you're going to have a fall town meeting. We might still have the designer go through the process of that and having the lights and knowing that we can pull that out or be, you know, somewhat segmented in a way that could come out of a bid if the funding doesn't come to fruition, or vice versa, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, quick question regarding high school graduation. So will there be the opportunity for some school committee members to participate on the platform part, as part of the platform part? I did it 2 years ago and it was awesome. I didn't do it last year. You said tickets, but I don't mean like in the seat.
Yeah, so because we're at the Fine Arts Center, the students are going to be on stage in order to create more seating in the main part of the auditorium. So that limits how many people are on stage. They're going to have a little bit smaller party on stage. So it may be just the chair and a few others, right? So, but nonetheless, I didn't get a chance. I do need to circle back with the high school administration to see where they are ticket-wise, because they were going to offer a certain number of tickets to students, then see how many they actually needed and sort of see what they had left. So, you know, there may be availability for you guys to go and be a part of that. I just haven't been able to close that loop.
I was just going to circle back on the fact that they're giving out tickets this week. By Friday, the tickets will be all done, but I got my tickets today.
Congratulations.
Just a quick question for the summit graduation. is it encouraged for us to attend? Should we attend? As a new committee member, I'm just curious
It's-
what the
It's
obligation is.
absolutely, there's no obligation. You know, I will, because the Amherst Finance Committee meeting at 11, I'll probably be there for a limited amount of time. It's a very small affair. You're certainly welcome to come. But, you know, it's not required in any way. But if you'd like to sort of see it, it's a little different than high school. It's much, much, much more intimate.
Okay. And then Debbie Westmoreland will reach out about the other graduation.
Yeah, we'll, either she or I will reach out, clarify some of those finer points.
Thank you. Anybody want to make a motion?
Point of order is much faster. Time has elapsed. If nobody moves, we're done.
William?
I had 2 future agenda items. Can I throw those out or no?
Can you email
I'll
us?
retract my point of order.
So,
Do you want to email me?
so just quickly, if we could do the a mobile phone update. I know that it's my understanding that they kind of banned mobile phones in the middle school. So if we maybe could have an update how that's going in the middle schools, and maybe we should push that forward into the high school. And then the other question is, do we need to reorganize Union 26? I think per policy we have to, because we just had the vote in Pelham. But we don't have a Union 26 meeting right now, so.
I think the chairs, when I read the policy, I think it's the chairs of Amherst and Pelham
That organize it?
that organize it and set that meeting. Because it's not a region thing.
Point of order, time has elapsed.
So chairs of, chairs of Pelham.
Okay.
Don't even adjourn. We don't have to, no.
We don't have to.
We're adjourned.
Okay. Tillman found us a shortcut.
I thought the composition of Union 26 is defined.
It is defined in that it has to be reorganized every year after the last town election.
But I thought it was defined as the.
We just had our town
Who's on
election.
it, yes, but who's the chair and who's not, who's the.
Oh,